Hello, I'm Steve Smith. Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. Episode number 73. We're coming to you from Boynton Beach. We're sitting inside the FM Tennis Performance Center. And last week, Fergus O'Rourke from the Emerald Isle, Ireland, green. So good. This week we're going more green with Dartmouth. We have Raleigh Grossbaum. Welcome, Raleigh Grossbaum. Tell us where your journey began. The land of potatoes, right?
Yeah, that's right. I grew up in Sun Valley, Idaho, and parents are both came over to be ski bums, and just love the weather and the skiing out there, and so I grew up in a small town in Idaho, and playing on a backboard and skiing in the winter.
But so tennis wasn't your first sport. You were a mountain climber and other things too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a number of outdoor activities. Actually, soccer was my first big passion, but I picked up tennis around 12 and, just fell in love with it. And, out on the backboard pretty much every weekend and another number of other things with, rock climbing and skiing, ultimate frisbee. And
people throughout the Intermountain, what a beautiful part of the country, but sparsely populated. I mean, to go from one city to the next is a hike.
Yeah.
The Intermountain, correct? So what was the closest city to your small town?
Yeah, Boise, Idaho was where we'd go in the summer to play tournaments, and it was about 2.5 hour drive. They had some sectional tournaments.
And there's Las Vegas, there's Salt Lake, Denver. Yeah. They're all a long ways away.
Much further, yeah. Salt Lake's maybe 4.5 hours. Vegas, 10.
High altitude tennis, that's a different ball game. How high is Boise? Or your small town?
Yeah, Boise's a little less. Sun Valley, maybe 4,000, 5,000 feet.
All these fun questions. What type of skiing?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a phenomenal skier compared to the kids I grew up with, but mostly just downhill, all mountain skiing. I just like to go fast. I was not a competitive skier, but...
The listeners know I grew up playing ice hockey. Grew up not too far from Lake Placid. Went to a prep school that had its own ski lift, but never really skied. I can remember before snowboarding was popular, we would take a junior water ski, take the fin off, drill a hole in the tip of it, put a rope in it. And the hockey players, we would go to the ski hill, and it was just instant. It was so easy to take. I mean, it was hanging onto the rope and leaning back, and it was a ton of fun. But so many questions. I know I've talked to you so much. Mats Wilander, I think one of his children, because they had such a difficult time with humidity, the skin ailment, that's why they were living in Idaho, correct?
Yeah, that was part of the reason that they ended up in Sun Valley. He has a couple children, and I actually played high school tennis with one of them, Carl Wilander. He was my same age, graduating class in high school, so we played on a high school tennis team together. And
did you hang around with his father?
A little bit. Actually, funny story is I wasn't that aware of the history of tennis growing up, and so I didn't really know how big of a deal Mats Wilander was, and my dad signed me up for a clinic one time, and I didn't want to go. Who's this guy? Lives in Sun Valley, probably not that good. And a couple years later, I found out that, this guy is, the real deal.
I think it was 7 Grand Slams. He hit the ball so well. He's from Växjö, and I know I'm mispronouncing it. I've been to that town in Sweden many times, and my sons both trained there when they were younger. With Wilander, he actually lost in his club championship, and then he went and he won the French. I believe he was 17. But by the time 88 came around, he won a Grand Slam on grass. He won in the Australian one was on grass. So he won on every surface. But in 88, and again, I can be off by this and that, he won 3 out of the 4. So he never won Wimbledon. I'm not saying he won 3 out of 4 in 88, but so he won the U.S. Open, he won the French, he won the Australian, but he did win the Australian on grass. But what a great tennis player! Very basic game. But by the time 88 came around, he was a complete tennis player. He was not just a phenomenal player from the baseline. So tell us, played high school tennis, junior tennis. Was that really intensified or just more like at the high school level?
Yeah. I played high school tennis. I thought I was pretty good because I played only in Idaho. Big fish, small pond. I was one of the better players in the state. That put me at like maybe 1,000 in tennis recruiting as my career high as like a 1-star, 2-star recruit, but didn't have the availability to travel and play big sectional or national tournaments, and honestly wasn't good enough. Played the local USTA tournaments in Boise and stuff. Did all right, but was a doubles player. Won state in doubles a couple of times. Again, Idaho, that's not super impressive, but I thought I was something special, and I didn't realize how much higher the level got until I got to college, and boy, was I in for a awakening.
From high school, you went straight to Boise State?
Yeah. So I knew Greg Patton relatively well. Played some junior tournaments with his son, and Greg's great guy, awesome coach, awesome personality, and he basically said pretty straight up, he said, we're looking for kids this ranking, but you're welcome to come be a part of the team in a student manager, volunteer role, string some rackets, feed some balls, and if you get good enough, start beating people on the team, I'll put you on. And I, arrogant 17-year-old me thought that sounded like a reasonable option. So, loved my time there, learned so much from Greg Patton, and boy, the Boise State college tennis connection. When I was there for 3 semesters, I got to work with, I think it's now 5 players, 5 coaches that are in the NCAA with Luke Shields, Clancy Shields, both were assistants while I was there. And then Damian Hume was there first semester while I was there. He's at Princeton now as the assistant. Garrett Patton was a player while I was there. He's assistant at UC Santa Barbara now. Luke Shields is assistant at Oklahoma. Clancy Shields is head coach at Arizona. And then, of course, obviously Greg Patton. So, he really, that team really had a lot of college connections. And so I learned so much from being there. But after a year and a half, they were, at the time, they were 15 in the country, and I was not as close as I thought I was. So with some good advice, and actually part of it was Greg Patton's just amazing energy. He would rile up the troops, and I would get so fired up, and then I'd go string some rackets, and I just kept thinking I gotta get somewhere where I can play. So ended up transferring out to Ferris State after 3 semesters.
Let's go before we go to Ferris State with Greg. I know I've met Greg in the 70s when he was a college coach at UC Irvine. I was spending time at Vic Braden's, which is right around the corner, Cote de Casa. Greg's sister married one of my students, and then I spent time with his daughter. But tell me again his son's name.
Garrett Patton.
Garrett. Let's go through that again. So Garrett is coaching where?
Garrett's at UC Santa Barbara as an assistant. Just left. He was at Michigan as a volunteer assistant.
And the name of the coach at Princeton is?
Damian Hume, South African. Now he's at assistant at Princeton. Been there a while.
And the 2 brothers?
Yeah, Clancy Shields at Arizona, head coach there, and Luke Shields was the head coach at Fresno State, and then now he is obviously their program got dropped, and now he's the assistant at Oklahoma, and everyone doing pretty well, really making teams better and moving up the rankings. So yeah, just a great group of people. And then also there, while I was at Boise State, I was coworker kind of in junior tennis off the side with Christian Whedon, who's now the head coach at Boise State on the men's side. And Beck Rogar was there, who's now the director of tennis at Boise State. So just the number of people. And then another name there, Jim Morgat, who was influential in my introduction to the GreatBase and to really tennis coaching. He's not a college tennis coach, but certainly highly involved.
He was, though.
He was a college
years
tennis
and years.
coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Married a college coach. That's how I know Jim Morgat. His wife, the former Jennifer Roberts, who coached at Illinois for a long time. She was actually at Illinois first out of the Tyler Junior College Tennis Tech program, and then Craig Tiley, whose name comes up quite a bit. Let's go back to Greg Patton. His enthusiasm, amazing. Say a few things about Greg. He was just inducted into the. I say just. I think we've all lost track of time with the pandemic, but it wasn't too long ago that he was inducted to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. No, he was, an inspiration. Loved by so many people. Big influence on me, both, in the way that the energy that I bring to the court, and then also just the passion. He actually got me a job in Santa Barbara at the Family Vacation Center out of UCSB. He worked for 20 years as director of tennis there, and one summer it just happened to be that I was going to be in the area, and he set me up, and he came down and spoke at that camp. And I'll never forget, one of the things that he would always say is, some people are observers in life and some people are participants. Be the participant, be engaged, be involved. And he just, even to this day, he's so fired up. Anytime he's talking tennis, anytime he's talking about anything, just the energy, the enthusiasm.
The love.
Yeah.
Love the journey.
Yeah.
Actually, we use a term or two terms with observing, to be an active or passive. Sometimes you actually need to be passive or you're in the background just taking notes. But we, on the same token today, I think maybe it was yesterday, where we had 18 players visiting and 6 coaches. And sometimes I think it's important to take that role where you don't really have a speaking part. Patton, I sum up Patton by the drill little kids do around the world, where you go from one side of the court to the next. So like say you start with 16 players, 8 on each side. If you're rallying one ball, if you miss, you're out. And he has the personality where he gets 20-year-olds that are Division I tennis players fired up about playing around the world.
Yeah. And he's a great speaker too. I know he speaks at a lot of the conferences and just so involved, has done so many things with tennis and really grows passion. You can see, I think, by the number of his former players that are now college tennis coaches or involved in college tennis, or tennis as a whole. I think he makes the game, really enjoyable and makes being on the tennis court just the best time. So
I wonder if there's much on YouTube with Greg Patton speaking.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm sure there must be.
Yeah, I have to look that up. No, when he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, I would think it was just 3 of them. It was Dave Fish, who we've had on the podcast, a longtime coach at Harvard. We had Doug Verdick, who spoke on behalf of his father. But he had such an outstanding college career. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame. Now, Greg left Boise and then went back. He was there forever. He went to I just think that his story where, Southern California, densely populated, just the environment and the mountains and love of nature. So he finds himself taking this job away from the hotbed of tennis, and he goes up to Boise, Idaho, and puts him on the map, basically, right?
Yeah.
But he left the USTA when Doug McCurdy became the director of player development, and he did that for a while. But just like a lot of people, he found himself wanting to go back to college tennis.
Yeah.
You obviously had a long career. So tell us, so you went from there, but when you were there, so you weren't cracking the lineup, but they gave you a role where you contributed to the team.
Yeah, for sure. Not cracking the lineup. I wasn't on the roster, not an active player, not a player. But I would string rackets whenever I needed, whenever the guys needed, and feed balls and observe practice and take notes. And for a while I was documenting. He wanted all his practices documented so he could go back and see which ones were effective, which ones weren't, and just being around the team. And what a group of guys that was the 3 semesters I was there.
But tell us about Morgat. I know he was there, but then you went into real estate for years and years, and then he got back into not college tennis, but junior tennis. You worked with him, then he's the one who connected you to Ferris State?
Yeah. So, a number of connections to Ferris State, but Jim Morgat, I didn't really have any, considerable technical training in tennis growing up in Sun Valley. had a few coaches, not that much in terms of funding and stuff like that. So, just kind of self-taught. And then one of my friends convinced me the summer after my senior year in high school to go to this camp. Jim was running, and I kind of rolled my eyes at it a bit, and I was going to be the oldest one, but my buddy said it was, I had to go. And so I
Is
signed
this
up.
when he ran, where he had his own clay court? It was kind of a one court ranch, or
Yeah.
But he was tied with some other courts, so.
Yeah, he had a court in his backyard, a clay court, and then maybe 100 yards away there was four hard courts in his neighborhood. And
That's a guy who loves clay courts. Where you remember he told me one time that it has to be like brown sugar on oatmeal. I mean, the surface has to just be perfect, just this way.
Yeah.
So you taught for him then.
Yeah. So that was a big turning point in my life where I was like, okay, I really want to be a tennis coach. Hearing the information really for the first time, and the character speeches and talking about life in conjunction with tennis, and then also the technical aspect and really teaching it from a fact-based side. And I love the information. I changed, I think, every single one of my strokes. And then I was at Boise State the following semester, and so I worked for him on the side, and he kind of taught me how to coach, and started my first few legitimate private lessons, and running some clinics with him. And so I worked with him for that time on the side. And Christian Whedon was also there, who's now head coach at Boise State.
I don't really know Christian, but I know he supports what our efforts with trying to improve tennis teaching. Just so he's good comments on Facebook and what have you. A hockey guy too. Is he Swedish or?
Yeah. Swedish. And he played for Jim at Boise State, and then got involved coaching, and so introduced the GreatBase through Jim. And
he coaches the women's team now.
He coaches, so he was the women's coach and did very well, and then he actually transitioned over and is now the head coach of the men's team.
That's the same thing Jim did too. He was a women's coach, then he became the men's coach.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm always told that's very difficult to do. Not many people pull that off. Where you and I think it's unfortunate if you get labeled if you're a women's coach or a women's coach. And we've mentioned on this podcast, I don't really see the difference between coaching women and men. I know it's different, but at the same time, when it comes down to forehand's a forehand, I don't really understand the ATP forehand versus the WTA forehand. But so then you found your way to Dallas with Jim, is that right?
Yeah, so Jim ended up taking a job at Lifetime in Dallas, and I went down there. I was, summer just looking for tennis and work, and he offered to have me join him moving down to Dallas. So I did that. The first summer he was there, helped him get set up, and then they built a beautiful 10-court indoor facility there, and went down again the next summer between school, and helped out there.
No, I know his wife Jennifer has family in Dallas, and with Jim made a lot of trips, maybe over a 2-3 year period anyway, to Brookhaven in Dallas, where Anderson is. So people listen to our podcast, there's a lot of connections with. But from there, you went to Ferris.
Yeah. So I was kind of toying around with the idea of going, transferring and playing somewhere. Again, Greg Patton heavily involved, just like inspired me to want to compete and be part of it. And one of my friends went on a visit, actually the same guy who connected me with Jim initially, this kid Gavin Hatter, who I played tennis with in Boise, like a little brother to me. And he went on a visit to Ferris and came back and was like, they have a professional tennis management degree. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool. D2, lower level, something I could play. And then turns out through Jim, I found out that Chad Berryhill, the coach, was GreatBase trained and had spent a lot of time with you. And so it kind of just all fell together. And very fortunately, Coach Chad gave me a spot on the team.
Say that again? Fortunately, unfortunately?
No, very fortunately.
Fortunately, okay.
Yeah, very fortunately. I was not, I showed up, I was number 15 on the team. And the first day of practice, I lost 6-0, 6-0 to the number 14 guy on the team. And so I came back and Chad had his hand over his head. He's like, oh, boy, we got some work to do here.
Well, I think with others, but Jim Morgat really, which I know now firsthand, having spent a lot of time with you, really believed in your work ethic, your energy level, which is great.
Yeah. He was a huge reason why. I mean, I went out there for like a recruit showcase, and yeah, I lost. I did not. I mean, I just wasn't that good at the time, and so I think Jim telling Coach Chad that I was, my work ethic and character, and yeah, basically Coach Chad took Jim's word on it and gave me a spot, and yeah, again, I got so lucky to be a part of that, and it allowed me. It started my my Ferris State journey and allowed me to play college tennis, which was a dream come true.
So you went from the blue football field at Boise to the ice of Michigan.
Yeah.
Weather's much worse in Michigan.
Yeah.
Than anything that you experienced in. Is that right? Would you say that?
Yeah. I mean, the temperature is similar, but Sun Valley was sunny and cold, and Michigan was overcast. But honestly, it's tough. It's a tough place to go live, but it made it very possible to just a lot of time studying, a lot of time playing tennis, not that much for distractions for the most part, and so it was a pretty good environment in a lot of ways to work hard and to focus on a few things.
I think of going back to the Intermountain. I think of blue skies and fluffy snow. Drawing a blank to the place in Utah. I love that place. Park City.
Yeah.
I taught there. Aspen with Vic Braden. He had a tennis school, ski school actually. When you hear skiers talk, Michigan, you're not back east by any means, but the conditions are different. But Michigan winters are tough. Did you go to hockey games when you were at Ferris State? Most important question.
Yeah, no, almost every single one. The team, I think the year before I got there, the team at a Division II school, the hockey team plays Division I because there's no Division II hockey. So a small school in middle of Michigan made the NCAA finals and lost a close one. And so just the hockey fandom at Ferris State was huge. The crowds were always full and loud and excited playing against, teams like University of Michigan and, all the biggest names in the country. And we got Ferris State, and the athletics there has been doing really well. Really going off.
You could talk about Colin Cadwell. I thought forever he was the glue. I've made 3 trips to Ferris State. It was the glue of Ferris State. But he brought a group, maybe 10 people he brought to spend spring break with me. So that's, that's in March. And then by maybe April, but not much longer. Of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs can go way into May or the first part of June. But Ferris, not the NHL playoffs, the Frozen Four. So the Frozen Four is obviously not way into the summer or way into the beginning of summer, but they made the Frozen Four in Tampa. So I know one of the PTMers who spent their spring break with us. He was in the band.
Wow.
He was in the band. Here's something for people who want to go to a NCAA final in hockey. I know this from experience that if the teams that lose, you're just 4 teams, so the teams that lose in the first 2 rounds, the semifinals, all the kids go home because they're not hanging around for, to go to the third place, the playoff.
Right.
So if you want to get a ticket, it's not as difficult to get a ticket to the final.
Oh, because you got to buy the tickets ahead of time. So half the people that bought tickets.
Yeah, so half the people bought tickets. They're disappointed, and especially if it's in Tampa, they're going to go to the beach. Their team lost.
Yeah.
But the PTM program, we were talking about that the other day. There's such camaraderie. There's so many Ferris Staters. I think we have camaraderie. We have a network within our alumni. We could call that Tennis Tech, Tennis Smith, GreatBase. But I think that is based more on camaraderie, where ours is on information. What would your comment on that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ferris, comparatively to Tennis Tech, is definitely networking, more the business side. And certainly there were tennis teaching classes, and we did learn tennis teaching, but I think probably less, based on my time with you, less intensive than how it would have been at Tennis Tech. In the end, it was a business degree with tennis specifics that encouraged, going to conferences. We had a number of internships throughout the year at the club there, and then summer internships where we went out and taught at different facilities. And so, really engaged us in the tennis community and got us experience and, taught us, we had classes, beginning teaching techniques and advanced teaching techniques, but not quite to the level of detail that you teach with GreatBase and Tennis Tech.
Well, yeah, I think with so many differences. One is for the longest time, I know Methodist has been on the block a long time. That was number 3, but the Tyler Junior College program was first. A few years later, Ferris State. But the weather, you had the 4 indoor courts and the long winters. That was a big difference. We had a 15-hour lab where a good part of the year, 15 hours per week. I did say on an earlier podcast, I had the option to make it 12, but I made it 15. So that's 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday. But I went to Ferris State one time where Derek Emile, he got approval and I ran a camp. So I had 10 spots, and basically it was pretty much 8 players from, most of them were from Chicago. Yeah. Junior players came in with their parents. But we pulled a name out of the hat where 2 Ferris Staters could go. But they all could come and watch. So during that period of time, that's where I was there, and I said, guys, they asked me, went out to dinner with Derek and Colin, said, hey, guys, you got a PE class with 24 students. That's 24 private lessons. But we had a different weather, and actually it was a 2-year program. We had much more of an on-court structure, a lab. But Colin, I know there's been, I just think 4 directors, maybe now they're on their 5th. It's not a large number.
Yeah, well.
But Colin was there for a long time. He was there when you were there?
Yep. Yeah. And he was incredible. Such a positive guy. Really helpful. Worked around the clock, and was someone, a lot of senior speeches, seniors got up and got teary-eyed about the relationship they had with Colin. So huge influence on the program, on so many of the students that went through that program.
Well, I take my hat off to people who are in the PTM programs, taking out a college degree, and because I just know so many people just snap their fingers in their tennis coach because they're a good player. The consumer doesn't know better. I quote all these people. Welby Van Horn, who was a world-class tennis player, top 10 player in the world. It's a bonus if you can play. Yep. And for what you're doing too, I think it's great for listeners. It's certainly Andy Fitzell, the founder, the father of our podcast, give out value, guys. And you don't have to be a great player. And you've been so honest about your level of play. With your time at Ferris, tell us about your internships.
Yeah, so I did a few different ones, but I started with I kind of made my own each time. I didn't really want to do the country club scene, which was, a lot of them were wealthy areas, nice country clubs, very posh, and I was really wanting to just kind of get after it, and especially in the development side. So I started with my first one was in Plano, in Dallas, Texas, with Jim Morgat at Lifetime, and I just kind of made that into an internship. Obviously, learned a lot from him. Also learned a lot from Panum Paul, who was there.
Hummy baby.
Yeah, another one of the family. So that was great. Spent 2 summers in Plano, and I look back and I did it wrong. Spending the winters in Michigan and the summers in Plano. That was not a wise decision climate-wise, but learned so much there, and got to spend a lot of time with Jim Morgat and his family, who were great influences in my life. And then the next two summers, I went to the camp that Greg Patton got me the job at in Santa Barbara. Wasn't an academy style, but great for the personality. Learning to get up in front of crowds, and it was. I can see where a lot of Greg Patton's traits come from, being in Santa Barbara and working that camp. And I've gone back there now each summer that it's been run. Obviously, with COVID, it was shut down last summer, but yeah, great place, a lot of great people. And I brought a number of my friends there to work with me and get the job. And yeah, I can see Greg Patton ended up being there for, over 20 years every summer. And Garrett and Chelsea grew up a lot of summers spending their time there at the camp. And so great experience on that. And I love my summer internships.
Well, the listeners, an internship, to say, okay, we take, the summer for a college student is almost 3 months, and okay, I'm going to go mentor under this coach. I know I was on the advisory committee at Ferris State one time, and I'm trying to persuade the guys that, initially try to wear the hat of a tennis teacher and try to do the very best you can with tennis teaching, and then get to the point where you then can manage a staff and teach your staff to teach, and just for the good of the game. That's the ball hopper side. We understand, you got to carry the briefcase too. But I can remember trying to tell the Ferris State students, don't base your internship on where you can make the most money.
Yeah.
And then with Chad, who was with us for 5 years, he did, I think it was 2 years at UCF. He's been college coach for a long time. It's amazing how many years have gone by. Now he's been at St. Leo. So I'm going to guess that he's easily 20 years into it now. That's a good ballpark guess. But I remember having conversations with Derek, Emile, Colin, and Chad where the staff, or I should say the enrollment, and it wasn't really that large at ballpark at that time. It was about 50 students total.
No.
To have them all stay at the tennis camp at Ferris, and they said, well, we wouldn't have enough positions because camp's not that large. And I said, well, just give me a list and I will get every one of them a job with somebody that I've trained.
Yeah.
But that was at least discussed.
Yeah. Actually, that happened relatively at one point. When I was there, the freshman first year internship had to be at either Ferris State summer camps, or there's another one, I think, 4-star tennis camps or 5-star tennis camps.
Well, the idea was there, but it was never to actually be mentored by someone who had, and we tease, someone asked one of our coaches, are they a great baser? And we have a new reply. We're asking all the people that we're in connection with on improvement of tennis teaching is, somebody asked you about the great base. You mean solid fundamentals? Just have that be your fun. What about the great base? You mean solid fundamentals? It's like, who can argue the great base? Zverev, Sasha, the younger brother, not too long ago, he was interviewed and he said, well, I have to thank my father for my great base. I mean, I one time had 2 students who ended up, when I left Tampa, and 2 of my students, they didn't make the right decision. They should have just continued to work with Roberto Calla, who was with me for 15 years, but they ended up at another academy, and I would be back in Tampa. This particular academy, they allowed me to come in, and it was on a college campus. It was USF, where I could bring a pro player, and I can remember at this new academy, they said, well, they had no idea. 2 young guys, they were, hanging around to finish their degree. 2 former team players at USF. They both said about these 2 juniors, they're the only players we have that have a great base. It's just when people talk sports, that term just comes up. Yeah. It's a foundation. It's just fundamentals.
And that's where I think a lot of times the name Great Base just has become a little bit of a name, and people forget the root words, Great Base, and see that it's about developing a solid foundation.
No, we've had coaches. It's no secret with the governing body of tennis, the USTA. We have USTA coaches that have said, well, the Great Base it's okay for young beginners, but you need to blend in other methods. They just haven't done their homework.
No.
And it goes no further than they think of it as. For the longest time, it's just, let's use my name in third person, Steve Smith stuff. Then with Andy, who I've known for a long, long time, but what, the time he dedicated the last few years is it became Andy and Steve stuff with, there's a little history to it, So tell us, from Ferris State, you graduated from Ferris State, and then what?
Yeah, so graduated 2017, went back to Santa Barbara for the summer, and ended up getting a pretty great opportunity to work at the USTA National Campus, one of its first years. We went down there actually through PTM, my spring break, my senior year, and met with Chris Michalowski, another Ferris Stater, and just got the connection, and was inspired by the sheer quantity of courts and the facility that they had. And so throughout the summer, worked on getting a job there, and then I was hired as a teaching pro on the community side, in the higher level groups for the community side. And so I took that at the end of the summer in 2017, and it was awesome. It was a great opportunity. There was tons of tennis, so much tennis to watch between having all the national tournaments there, and some weekends where the courts are full, all 100 courts, someone's playing tennis. And so that was an amazing opportunity, working with players who traveled from all over to come play. And then the second piece of that, which I didn't realize when I took the job, but spending so much time with the player development staff and being able to watch the pros practice. Just incredible, the number of coaches that I met through being at the USTA. So many coaches came in, so many coaches were working there. And so that was an awesome experience, a great learning opportunity to see so many different methods and watch so many different lessons and clinics and everything, all levels, all age groups. Great there.
Well, you sound a little bit like one of your fellow alum, Kyle Lacroix. He was on our podcast, and fantastic guy, high energy, professional. And I know you have to be positive. Oh, this is a public. We have a handful of listeners. I'm told by Andy that we have more and more listeners. But the downside of it, with being at the governing body of tennis, was there a connection between, now that it's behind you, I think people first and foremost need to be self-critical. Was there a connection between early childhood development? Was there a connection from that level to the junior development program, to the pros? You mentioned you saw a lot of different methods. I think what you have to elaborate upon that. I think almost every time you watch a pro, it's like you see a different method. I do think it's great to have different personalities, different styles within the teaching staff, but is there continuity from court to court?
Right. Yeah, no, they're definitely, with such a large staff and such a big operation, certainly there were plenty of areas that, needed work or could be improved upon. And, I think for me personally, it was great to see the differences and, watch different coaches' styles, and I look back and I think, okay, I'm doing something and I'm engaging with a player like John Glover, the way he engages with a player in a lesson. And I think specifically about him, or, the movement drills that Johnny Parks used to do. And so I think about all these different style lessons, settings, and that's, really valuable. But I think certainly as players are moving through the USTA, the red ball on the community side, was not influenced as much as it could have been by the upper groups, and the number of players that transitioned from the red ball on the community side up through the system into the high performance side. And then, ultimately you want a kid to go from the community side red ball up to, a player development program, if they're really following the pathway. And I don't think there's been much of that.
Well, I know you weren't there that long, but obviously that's the way we go about it with, it's all one, beginners, and certainly we can be criticized for going too slow, over teaching. People say, well, when are you going to let them release the wrist on the forehand side? And the conversation doesn't really go past the forehand. But I remember being about the same age you would have been when I was with Vic Braden. And I'd say, okay, I got myself in a little trouble because Mike McLaughlin, who I communicate on a regular basis with, who's also on the staff, after I was there for a while, I said, Vic should have juniors here. And, this should happen and this should happen. And I remember it being presented to Vic through Mike. And Vic, he's such a nice guy. But the mistake was I didn't make those comments to Vic. Hey, Vic, you should be coaching juniors. But years later, I can remember teaching with Vic Aspen for 2 weeks and said, Vic, you should be at a place like Saddlebrook. And I was, committed to bringing some juniors up. And so for me to go to Aspen or near Aspen, it was just minutes away. I should be able to just rattle off the name of the ski town. But so I said, Vic, you should be at a place like Saddlebrook. You should be where the players are, the pros. So I get back and, I said, Vic, you just need to call up Tom Dempsey. Of course, he's Vic Braid. And Tom Dempsey, the owner of Saddlebrook at the time, I think his son is running it now, but in that ownership role. But I'm not totally clear on that. But so Vic calls me up, says, Steve, can you meet me at Saddlebrook on Wednesday? And I said, Vic, I just can't leave. I've got people that are coming in here from out of state, out of country. I just can't get up and go to Saddlebrook. But I remember Vic being down there and being totally shocked. Because many times Vic would go a place and he's speaking and he's not seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like Wayne Bryan talking about how great the private sector is. Well, Wayne's always done so much, bright guy. And of course, if your sons get to that level, the type of places the sons are going, they're not, is he really seeing how bad it is out there?
Right.
From this coach to that coach. And I mean, we see it because of our Braden background. We say we, the people we've trained, just see it instantly. Like the other day, I was just watching this father help her daughter at the backboard. And I made a group of kids stop. They were just on the running trail. Said, stop, watch this. I said, it's not my position to say anything, but the dad, he has no information.
Oh.
And that's what we would like to see in the GreatBase, kind of like Little League Baseball years ago, that a parent's not intimidated by, and we get, well, it's not cutout art, it's not cookie cutter. But yeah, it is. I mean, this is the ready position. This is a unit turn. These are the basics. But you got a little bit of trouble by, and I know in training you, I could address that too, where you're the horse which is good. You're the type of horse that you have to pull back.
Yeah.
Instead, so many people are the horse that you have to try to push.
Yeah.
You want to. I heard that from a Colombian, John Rizzo. That John said, better to pull the horse than push the horse. But you were critical, and I remember Kathy Woods, the director at that time, said she complimented you by saying that thought you had the most potential of all the young people on her staff, but you were ahead of yourself. You were too knocking on the door, going, "Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?"
Yeah.
Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely I get overambitious, get excited about ideas, and I see things that I want to pursue. And certainly at the USTA, eventually the kind of end piece that made it not the right fit anymore was that the USTA, really you have to go along the procedures, and you got to run things through the chain, and things don't, you can't just jump out there and try something new. And so it was. For me at, what was I, maybe 18, 19, I'm sorry, 21, 22, 23 at that point, I just wanted to go and try things and be involved and, with the bigger program, the USTA, so much liability and so many channels that things I have to go through. So I think certainly at the USTA, I learned a bit of that. And then with you, I learned a lot about, being able to stay in my lane and present things, but being a little bit more realistic with the ambition and dialing it back a step.
I think dialing it back a step. I think the brain typing, the extroverted feeler. Kathy Woods, class act. I don't know Kathy all that well, but around her, a little bit here, a little bit there, because of the industry. And then her husband Ron, he was in charge of player development one time. But I can remember Kathy. She would get comments from player development. You need to make sure that you're working on what do they call it, the continental family.
Yeah.
And you do all these shots with a continental grip. And Kathy played at Penn. If everybody watched her hit a ball, she could really hit an underspin backhand really well. But for her to get the comment, from up above the player development, the big white ivory tower, you need to be teaching the continental family. And so there's frustrations all around. I think that's where we on the outside, I've mentioned before that Billie Jean King says that we would be the subordinates where the governing body tennis is a coordinate, so the subordinate knows what the coordinates are doing, but the coordinates don't know what the subordinates are doing.
Right.
The little guy on the outside. But for that, and I can remember that's how you ended up with me, is that you were so ambitious that you felt there was some frustration that you were spending as much time as possible over on the player development side. Like there's more to learn here than there is there.
There was definitely, I spent every minute that I wasn't working over there volunteering with Ramos and Dave Ramos in performance analytics and just watching the coaches and being involved. And I think, the coaches were super supportive in player development, and, all of them are great people and wanted to help and be involved. And I think it was tough from Kathy's perspective as, if all, I think we had 17, maybe it was 20 staff members. If all of us were going over in player development all the time, it was, she wasn't getting positive responses from the higher up player development people. They didn't want too much distraction. And so, in the end, I just, frustration factor and had gotten a lot out of that. And,
we're getting to Matt Clore, so Matt sends you to us. But Ramos, you mentioned Dave's name. He's a Ferris Stater.
Yep.
Mick, you mentioned, Ferris
Chris
Stater.
Michalowski goes by Mick.
Scott Schultz, Ferris Stater.
Scott Schultz started the Ferris State PTM program.
I met with Scott when Lake Nona, the USTA was just all bulldozers, no tennis balls. And, we talked to him about a number of different things, but Chad Burial actually applied. There was going to be a program at UCF. The tennis teams play at the USTA Center. But there's like 17 or 18 PTMers, correct?
Yeah, at the national campus.
When you were there?
Not quite that high, but it was, I think we were close to 10. I think the highest at one point, it was 9 working at the campus and 1 working at USTA Florida. So definitely heavily infiltrated by Ferris Staters over there. We had a good group.
But then you found out with there's different levels, like how much time people have spent with me. So like Jennifer Roberts, 2 years. But she would I remember she's so dedicated that Penum Paul, you mentioned, she worked for Jennifer at the University of Illinois tennis camp, and then the two of them just came in and just watched our camp for 1 week before they started their own camp. And they did that for a couple of summers. But with just the different levels of how much time, like Morgat, he spent numerous trips to Florida and then numerous trips to Brookhaven. And because I remember Jennifer just saying, hey, our little kids, Cameron and Caden, are learning to hit balls. So Jim had coached high-level world team tennis and college tennis. She wanted him to go back and, okay, this is how you teach fundamentals.
Yeah.
I know he had done quite a few things with the USTA, maybe not as a full-time national coach, but a traveling coach. I think Andy Roddick went on their honeymoon with the two of them, Roberts and Morgat. So you meet Matt Clore, you frustrate Matt Clore, and he tells you that you need to come hang out with me.
Yep.
Now you frustrate him because and I think your listeners, this is a good thing. We always tell people you want to be persistent, but you don't want to aggravate, like when you're even applying for a job.
Right.
Where you were sending him videos. But so Matt, he spent he recruited my son Connor. They were both at Florida State together for 2 years. And then he immersed himself in the information. And he certainly had an interesting background because his father, basic coach, which is a compliment. He taught fundamentals. All you got to do is watch his two sons play. I never really had a chance to watch Ernie's kids play, but so tell us a little bit about that. So Matt Clore, and I remember you making rookie mistakes where you're at the US Open. Listeners need to go through. We'll get to it where he's Raleigh's still in his 20s, and how did he end up where he is right now? We can talk about how the pandemic sidetracked your path. But how did you end up coming out? I was working a nonprofit out in Memphis. How'd that happen?
Yeah, well, a couple different avenues. The tennis world's so small. As one with Jim Morgat initially, and then Chad Berryhill at Ferris, and Matt Clore, and then actually a huge blessing as well at the USTA was the Cardenas family. And when I first got there, my first day, I ended up hitting with little Mauricio, before I was even officially hired. And, very quickly there was a connection there because I recognized that they had been taught well. And so connected the dots, GreatBase, and through you. And so spent a lot of time with them, working with them individually. And they also said, you need to go visit Steve. And so, whether that was 4 or 5 different people saying I need to go spend some time at Steve Smith's, and I'd watched a lot of the content and gone through a number of the courses. And I think you came down a couple times, and we got some food and just talked to you.
Okay.
And
That's right. I circle back. The rookie mistake was you're at the US Open, and Matt was coaching Mackenzie McDonald, and you just sat right down next to him and said, what's the game plan, coach? and Matt, who's so quiet, level-headed, he goes, it's not really the right time for me to talk. But then also, too, I forgot little Mauricio, his brother, too, Santiago.
Yep.
But that comes back to a mile away, Welby Van Horn, Arthur Ashe. You can tell Arthur Ashe, you can tell a Welby Van Horn student from a mile away. And little Mauricio, at that time, maybe weighs 50 pounds soaking wet. He could hit the ball really well.
Oh.
What's a sad note, this happens all the time. It's really sad. People think, well, that's such a boost to the GreatBase. Doesn't that make you feel really good that people can just walk up to a person and they know that we train them?
Right.
It doesn't mean that they're going to win the tournament, but they may not run the fastest, jump the highest, but it's like this kid can come to the net.
Yeah.
I think of Alanis Hamilton was here today. Her little sister, they both have won a little Mo title. I think Lannis is top 5 in the country, or I know you know these people, Mason Vaughn. Like, they can come to the net.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be, getting the gold ball at the end of the tournament. But I think that's a rather sad note that fundamentals. Our sport is taught so poorly from a fundamental standpoint that our students can be easily recognized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hear it all the time. Like you said, they say, "Oh, you can see they all look the same." And I always think back, and I've tried to find another sport where that's a negative. Any other activity you think of, could you imagine basketball or golf, where it's like, oh yeah, these you can't even tell that they're where you can notice if people are taught by the same person because their jump shot looks different than the rest, or the same comparatively. And playing guitar, anything really, it's so many skills. Or this is the way it is.
Well, again, the negative, and I think I would be the most critical of the GreatBase. And again, it's a system of systems. The people criticizing it for the most part, don't have a clue. And then it was like, okay, Andy Fitzgerald says it all the time. You got to be humble to learn.
Yep.
And let me see your students hit the ball. Let me see your beginning students hit the ball. And most junior tennis coaches don't even work with beginners.
Right.
They can't even tell you the last time they talked to a beginner. But that looked the same. The GreatBase doesn't allow for someone to have an unorthodox game like, say, a Monica Seles.
Yeah.
And the way the brain works, you can hit the ball any way you want. Braden used to say, you shoot it out of your armpit. You would take the racket, put it under his armpit. But what you have to do is you got to stay the course, and you got the brain. If building myelin, if you do something, 10,000 hours really, in the end of it's a good start. 3 hours a day, 20,000 hours is better.
Yeah.
But so you came and you spent time with us. I could go through the reprimands. We'll have a session on that. So people listen to the last podcast. We have to make Brandon Flanagan happy. Give you that fertilizer. But so then you the pandemic comes into it. You'd have to help me out, but you get the job at the University of Southern Utah.
Yeah. So, pandemic not yet.
That was before the
pandemic. So I spent
head coach.
Yeah. So.
And how old are you then? 24, 25?
Yeah, I think it must have been summer when I was 25. And so after USTA, went back to Santa Barbara for a bit in the summer, and then ended up moving in with you in Memphis. And the plan was to stay for a month, and then you were going to send me to, Texas or Germany or South Africa, and you were moving down to Orlando. And I remember after the first week, I was just like, this is stuff I need to learn. I need to know this. And everyone I talked to that had been around was just like, stay here as long as you can. So I think I convinced you to let me help you move to Orlando. You needed an extra driver, and I said, okay, I'll do it. You said, well, don't you want to, go work at a club? And, I ended up helping move down to Orlando and staying at the little townhouse in Lake Nona. And 1 month internship turned into 9 months. And I think just being around it and being involved with the athletes there, a great group of people. And
yeah, I think that's an important point to share. We went through the 15 different types of teaching pros, male teaching pros, but the support pro, for you to take the role of starving artist, I told some people that today is that's my recommendations is don't teach the first 3 years, don't accept a penny, try to mentor under people. You're not going to learn, and I've been a conference junkie, but be around someone who's, had success and find, it's so difficult to say, well, I'm going to teach for 8 hours. And what happens is, in most places don't even have an orientation program. They just, here's your ball hopper, go to court 12 and you're good to go.
Yep.
And, granted, you always learn from yourself. You always learn from your students. I mean, experience is, they say, the best teacher, but I guess at that point you still didn't know you wanted to be a college coach.
Yeah, no, I was heavy on, I wanted to be with committed, ambitious players was I like that zone. And, for me, that was academy style. And actually really what switched it, certainly seeing the life of Greg Patton and how much fun he had with everything and the way his family, was set up was just incredible and loved watching him. But really the thing that flipped it actually was you at one point, you just said, like, it's kind of an offhanded comment where you're like, man, college tennis would just like that's a good life. That's a good setup. You said it resets each year. At the end of the year, you're done. You can evaluate, regroup, and you get a fresh start in the next year. And, so many aspects. I remember you saying that being around young people, constantly being around young people is so helpful and healthy. And so I started looking into that, and come summer of, lost track here, maybe 2019 summer, I had started applying to college jobs, primarily, volunteer assistant at D1 roles. I've never really been money motivated, so I was just trying to find the best place where I could learn and kind of grow my career and become a better tennis coach. And just, quite a bit of luck and I think, a lot of fortune. I was actually in Utah on my way to the West Coast, and the Southern Utah job got posted, and I didn't apply to any head coaching jobs, and I didn't apply to any paid D1 coaching jobs. And the one D1 head coaching job that I got, that I applied for, I ended up getting, and was very fortunate. Sonia Hahn, who was the sport administrator at the time, in charge of hiring, has been a former ITA National Coach of the Year, and been in tennis a long time, so very lucky there. And, I think it was fortunate for me is that the program had a lot of turnover previously, and they just wanted someone young and hungry, ambitious, and it was really a perfect fit in a lot of ways. I didn't come in with any expectations of how things should be run, how the facilities and usage, and certainly a program that needed some work. But, we had some players from the previous coach. It was incredible learning opportunity where I got to be ambitious and made plenty of mistakes and learned a lot.
Well, before we go to how the pandemic made a turn in your career, a young career at this point, but let's back up to college tennis. At one point, I was saying, okay, I'll do this. Went back to Tyler, Texas, and you could tell us about your master's degree, where you basically can take whatever course you want. What's it? It's the master's in
interdisciplinary studies.
Yeah, and but I've never really been a team coach in one sense. I was an interim at the junior college I worked at for 10 years. I worked as a consultant for several teams. The rules have changed. I can remember traveling an entire spring break with tennis teams.
Wow.
The group of realtors, should say, a couple key friends in Toronto who were connected. That's how I went to Raleigh for a while, because they're, talk about egos. They say, okay, we'll build a Tennis Smith Village, and we'll build a tennis facility in the middle. And I was going to get to pick the city, and I talked about Austin, but then there's so much tennis in Austin. Raleigh would be a place because North Carolina could really use it. Then I had 15 years in Tampa, and 10 years of that we ran a junior college women's team, and that's where Berryhill.
Right.
I was, the way it worked, it was part-time pay and full-time work, but the rules allowed us to interface this junior college women's team with the junior program. And it was tough on the girls. They'd come in and they'd be losing to 12-year-olds. But what I decided was I thought it would be better to work with 8-year-olds and 18-year-olds. We make more of an impact on tennis. And really the GreatBase, it's for every level. Andy's always telling me, don't let people pigeonhole it, because people will do that.
Yeah.
It's like Vic Braden. He used to go to the Championship Tennis Center, and it was one of the last outings he had. And I just know that he was discouraged, because when he came back, they just had him talk to the parents of little kids.
Yeah.
And, I think of, Vic watching a Mitchell Frank who won everything in juniors in college. You could say this about Braden. You could take. I've had this said about myself. Not to say that this is true, but for Braden, this is true. If Braden is when he was alive, if he was sitting in Florida, you take all. It's like I'm going to take all the knowledge of all the teaching pros and add it up, and Vic's still ahead of the game. I mean, it's just that's just the way it is. I mean, if you were to roll some film right now and critiquing someone's forehand or backhand, are you going forward and picking some internet guru to break it down? Or are you going back and going, I'm going to have Fat Albert look at it? And, and Vic, even we had Jack Rappel on, a great guy. We'll have him on again, a biomechanist. But he didn't spend the years, and Vic was a self-made biomechanist. But Jack didn't spend, he wasn't in the trenches where he ran the pro circuit. Then he coached these juniors in Southern Cal that all went on to be so successful. But no, I do think college tennis, there's closure. No. It's not just ongoing. You do get to, there's lots of reasons. You do get to select the players. Yeah. There's not that much parental involvement. Ideally, once school starts, you don't want to talk to the parents. Yeah. You want to talk to the juniors. And it's competitive. The one thing with coaching junior tennis, you get kids to win. As far as working for recognition, you're really not acknowledged like you are in college tennis. Right. We trained a young guy, Rafael Fontamora, and he early on worked. He did some things with Jose Garris, and then he was working with Megan Shaughnessy, and he's working with someone. I mean, I'd guess Megan was top 40 in the world, and all of a sudden, Rafael is in the public eye, and not that good, bad, or indifferent. Not saying that he didn't deserve it, but this is like, whoa, okay, we have all these coaches that are doing all these great things, but they're not acknowledged. I want
to throw out there. You mentioned Chad Berryhill in that last bit, and I think it's not fair to go on without mentioning the job he did at Ferris State with the program. Obviously, you've trained a number of people who've gone on to have successful college teams, and Craig Tiley at Illinois and Chad Berryhill, took a team at Ferris with some limited resources, obviously being in the north, in the cold, and a team that was not great. And in my 4 years, we went from being 500 team and just all right, maybe third, fourth, fifth in conference, and then Berryhill's last year we made Final Four, and then he actually the following year Elite Eight again, and what a job he did with the team there and bringing in players. And I realized that we moved on with Ferris State without talking about the team and the job that Berryhill did, and obviously got the job at St. Leo. And
at St. Leo, he's had teams in the top 10. The years go by too fast. I mean, he's already been there, I guess, a half dozen years. One thing about Colin Cadwell, I'll tell you a story with Colin and Chad. They used to argue when they were younger. They were students, going way back, students together, or Berryhill was a student, and he was the president of the student club. I'm just listening to these guys who now are very close. So they used to argue about forehands and backhands or whatever. And so then Berryhill left Ferris State, and then he said, hey, you and I both didn't know what we were talking about. For the first week, Berryhill worked with me. He's an ENTP. I interviewed the guy. ENTP is a planner. We brought Berryhill in to help with, he wanted to be a college coach. We were going to honor that, which we did. But at the same time, it's like he could really, with his skill set, could really help us with a GreatBase. There's things that we're still trying to do. If Berryhill had said, yeah, okay, I'll do this, the GreatBase would be at a completely different level. But anyway, Colin Cadwell will say this like many others. He goes, well, Steve, thanks for ruining tennis for me. Because when you watch people play, you just see in a New York minute holes in people's games. Yeah. So
it's frustrating to go to parks. I remember one of my first weeks
parks.
with you.
You would go to national tournaments.
Yeah, anything. But I remember specifically, we went to a junior tournament, and there was an academy being run on the side. One of my first weeks with you, and you just were like looking over there, shaking your head. There were kids all over the place, passionate kids working hard, but not getting information, and the game's a mess. And I just remember how much that affected you. And I think, I really like that from Colin, is like, it affects you watching players play, that, motivated kids, really good, ambitious kids. And
no, I'm sitting at the quarterfinals at Kalamazoo, and Jimmy Johnson, who I've trained, and he's run an academy, Advantage Tennis in Southern Cal for a long time. And he's laughing. We're watching some singles, we're watching some doubles, and I'm just going, and I certainly people know I can do that. Is it Johnson? This is not funny. This is our sport. Oh. We're sitting in Kalamazoo. It's the 18s. It's the quarterfinals, and this is what we've got. Oh. This is not funny. Oh. But coming back to Colin, so I'm in Chicago. I've been in Chicago so many times to do weekend outings, and Matt Davis, who's a Ferris Stater, he did an internship with me before he went to Ferris. And he was good enough where he was at Ferris. He was on the tennis team. And, he's done a lot of things with USPTA, where he's been president of the Midwest division and such. So young kid from Chicago, spent summers with me. Give me 2 seconds and I'll rattle off his name, but he spent a lot of time with me. So he went on to play Division III tennis. So he comes out, and he's a high school senior at that time, and I just, said, all right, Nick, Polish last name. So he comes up, and I said, all right, Nick, if you get up here and explain the serve, just put him on the spot, and I remember Colin going, we don't have one person who can do that. Yeah. People are at Ferris State, not to beat up Ferris State, but they're not there for 4 years. They're there for 4 years. And it's like rattling off the information, and people say, well, we're too exact. And, it's no, sorry, fellas. It has to be based on the dimensions of the court, physical laws. And just that's where are there nuts and bolts? And, coming back to Kyle, he took the high road, and with yourself taking the high road, I think that's great. But when, Carlin Navarro sent me a text today. It rained, and we're doing video with some people that visited this new FM tennis center. Carla sends me a text, and she said, "Hey, if you could do it right now, you could bring your kids down to the stadium in Delray, and Francis Tiafoe is practicing." Well, people who listen to us, just like with Stevie Johnson, I think we beat up Stevie on his backhand return. You know, I'll come back to Stevie Johnson, but so Carla talking about, hey, can the kids come down? Parents too, and let's watch. It's open. Let's watch Francis Tiafoe practice. We're not criticizing Francis Tiafoe of today. But if you were just to speculate, we're not saying, okay, Tiafoe should change his backhand volley.
Right.
If people were really pressure and had the skill set to, play conventional approach volleys and just attack his forehand and close at the net, which I think Craig O'Shaughnessy, who had an article out not too long ago, people could look up the brain game, The Big Lie. It's a big lie that you can't come to the net because of the rackets. It's a big lie that you can't come to the net because of the strings. No. But so no, that's where the nuts and bolts. It's not so much about taking tennis and just looking from the top down, and you got to look at it from both angles. But no, Stevie Johnson, his father, Steve Johnson Sr. I was very honored by this. I was at Indian Wells, and I had met him before, but he came up and recognized me through internet free education and just said, "Hey, I look at your stuff every day. Can I hang out?" But one thing that we quote Steve Johnson Sr. all the time is that tennis lets you know who you are. Yep. The old Fred Shearer, the hockey coach, sport doesn't build character, it reveals character. But so we want to get down the line with Dartmouth, but you're at Southern Utah, and there's a lot to be said that you're the head coach.
Yep. And
I think some ways you're better off to be the head coach.
Yeah.
With like say you worked. Well, I think you also need to mention that too. That you volunteer at Georgia.
Yeah.
We had Manny Diaz, the head coach at Georgia, who was on. I was thinking, a fun question. I did ask Manny, to digress here, who's more competitive, Welby Van Horn? I need to give you a hard time for not listening to some of these podcasts. You listen to this one though.
Yeah, of course.
So Manny Diaz, that's it. Who's more competitive, Isner, Pernfors, or Welby Van Horn? It says Welby Van Horn.
No.
And I could have said, well, Manny, you've done so well. You've won national championships. You've been there a long time. This is what you've accomplished in all these years. If Welby was the coach, how would he have done? And you might laugh and go, everybody would have quit. Because, I don't know if people they would have the guts and the mental fortitude to take old school coaching. But so tell us a little bit about the pandemic, that all of a sudden you're out of a job.
Yeah, well, at first it was a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. Initially, the pandemic happened, our season shut down, which was, heartbreaking. We were starting to hit stride and really, starting to see the fruits of our labors, and, really, really sad we didn't get to see the end of it. But one fortunate aspect of it was that, everything shut down, and, the workload went down significantly. And at Southern Utah, they have a setup where if you're a full-time employee, you can take classes for free. And so I started a master's program. I think the week it shut down, I got in touch and just said, I got to figure out something to do for the next few months and get involved in the master's program. And so that was at first, I was like, okay, this actually kind of works out. It was something I wanted to do and didn't think I'd have time to do both. And so the pandemic happens. I, go into full recruiting mode online and doing online courses, and that was positive. And then, we felt pretty safe from the cuts, because the Big Sky had a rule that was, you need to have a men's tennis team. And during COVID, that changed. And so, pretty quickly, Southern Utah dropped their team, and talk about heartbreak. I mean,
but they allowed you to, even though you were no longer an employee, you could pursue the masters.
Yeah, that was one of the things. We had a couple meetings with the president of the university. Actually, he was an amazing guy, and obviously it's hard, the decision that they made and eventually he made, but it was very gracious in the way he went about everything. And he specifically gave me permission to finish my degree fully covered. So great luck there. And so I was able to keep working on that. But certainly heartbreak. I mean, I write my journal each night, and I see it from years on, and I remember going back and seeing, right before, like the week before, I was like, I could stay here for 10 years. I'm mountain boy and like the skiing, like the adventure, Southern Utah with Zion National Park and Bryce Canyon. And so, and like you said, being the head coach, we didn't have that much resources, that many resources, and finances were tight. It was certainly balling on a budget and eating meals at Subway, flying Frontier with the guys, and 8-hour road trips. But I kind of like that. I'm a bit of a grinder anyway in that sense. And it would have been really cool to see what we could have done and really without expectation, just gone after it. And
that's the idea of making something out of nothing, where you mentioned a good number, 10 years to build a program. I really think the theory of isolation, being here in South Florida now, I've spent 7 years here. I'm familiar with South Florida in tennis. There's so much here that, but the theory of isolation. So when I was in Tyler, Texas, I had parents, there was no convincing really that they didn't need to go to Dallas. So then all of a sudden the USTA has a hit. I'm not even sure what they called them. Dave Anderson mentioned that recently. Satellite facilities or learning centers, whatever it was, and people said no. To turn down the USTA, say no, we'll stay right here. I mean, it's I don't think for a second people would hesitate to turn down the coaching, but it's tough for them to turn down the money and the wild cards. But they can talk forever. But I think people listening, especially young coaches, you must have got beat up. I know we've talked about it. Being younger, that's one. I mean, I've been in that situation. I know when I was young, training tennis teachers, like, who's this guy think he is? And that's one of the things, okay, watch my kids hit the ball.
Right.
But also, too, is not, and you've been so open and honest about it, not being a player. So the guys are giving you a hard time, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think earning respect is tougher when you don't have the pedigree of either playing, a really significant playing career or, a significant coaching history. And, I think my kind of goal going in was, earn respect by, the work ethic and just, I'm going to outwork these guys and I'm going to expect a lot of them and I'm going to give everything I've got. And, it was tough the first year I came in. There were 5 seniors on the team and, it was challenging. They had different ideas for sure. They'd been through a couple of programs, a few different coaches, and the previous coach brought in a bunch of really good players. We had challenges for sure.
Well, one thing is the false respect. Go back to the challengers. If someone's a player, they get false respect.
Right.
They get a respect, but it really. It doesn't mean blank to blank to blank to a tree.
Right.
That is false respect. I mean, it's like when Zverev hired Lendl, and there's a lot of hype, and they asked Federer, he goes, well, I don't know. I don't really know Lendl. I don't know what Lendl could do for him, but Zverev's already 3 in the world.
Right.
So there is a lot to be said about, there's a book, The Man Who Made Murray, and it's really a biography on Lendl. It's a great read. And so fair enough. I'm not taking anything away from Lendl, but he taught Murray because Murray was in Miami, Lendl's in Vero Beach. Okay, let's meet in Delray. And at that time, the center that's been mentioned on this website was run by either Thomas Olstead or Michael Darcy, people who he trained. And Carla Navarro was there. It's actually Carla Wojcik, and she said all Lendl said was shh, shh. And he really just got Murray to calm down. But Murray, gosh, it's just great what he's doing right now with his, coming back from surgery. But no, those are battles you have to fight. But that's where, how you fight that. Can ask you this, but just so we don't spend so much time, is you film people.
Yeah.
You document development. You put people through skills tests. We'll feed you 25 balls. We'll feed you the tiebreaker test. We'll have you play a match, and we'll give you the numbers. And you just let them know with facts. And that's how it's done in the NFL.
No.
I mean, let's just measure it and let's get this done. And it's autonomy, and everyone works together. And again, I think that we can all learn from, say, Macy, for example. Now that the movie's out, King Richard, the videos are out, and it's like, I influenced the tennis worldwide, and what's going on with the forehand? Isn't anybody looking and going, no one can play approach shots, no one can play approach volleys, no one's even talking about it. People playing one up, one back doubles. Right. I was sitting in front of TV today, and it was an old match between Tsitsipas and Zverev. And we teach kids to chart, like Jim Verdick, watch tennis. And like if Jack Kramer was watching, so you see a Tsitsipas hits a minus. He's so far back, he hits a minus on a slice backhand. And then Zverev comes in and hits a drop shot, hits a minus. And, to be around like a Pancho Seguro or a Jack Kramer, they would look at that and go, what are they doing? So I think a lot of times if people if they don't have the education in tennis, that they, to me, tennis is tennis. I remember coaching this girl, we mentioned, talking Irish tennis. The girl was an Irish champion. I was watching tennis with her, spent a long summer with us, and she said, how can you criticize these? They're pros. And my brother Mike used to say this about ice hockey is there's no difference between Pee Wee hockey and NHL hockey. A mistake's a mistake. Yeah. The one just happens at a faster rate.
Right.
With so then during the pandemic, you ended up having other job offers, like you were going to go to Cornell, but then they shut down, and then you tell us about that. Then you ended up at the University of Georgia.
Yeah. It was a really it was a rough summer, really a rough stretch overall. Learned a lot from that in a different way, but I had two opportunities. One was Dixie State, actually in southern Utah, about 50 minutes south of where I was starting a men's team, Division I men's team, and I got an offer to be the associate head coach there. So that was really tempting, but small program and brand new, a lot of work to be done. And then the other offer that I was juggling was, the Cornell volunteer assistant for Silviu. Let's see if I can pronounce his name right. Tennis OU.
Romanian.
Yeah, and he actually, I was introduced to him by you, or vice versa. He was introduced to me through you, and just an animal for work ethic and education and learning. And still talk to him a lot. I feel very fortunate to be, in the Ivy League with him, and we watch a lot of the same matches at tournaments and learn a lot from him. So anyway, I ended up going with that one, which was fortunate because the Dixie State job they dropped their program like 2 months later. And I bought I did my best Steve Smith impersonation. I bought a trailer and was going to live in Ithaca, out of the trailer. And so
I lived in a van in warm spots. I didn't live in a van in Ithaca.
Yeah. Mine had heating, I think.
You're a mountain boy. Maybe you could have survived. I think it's pretty tough.
Figured it out. But so I ended up driving halfway across the country. I got to Chicago, and it kind of came out that Cornell went on a hiring freeze, which wasn't going to be an issue because I was a volunteer, but it wasn't because of money. It was because they didn't want more people on campus during COVID. And so they were trying to get it through, and it turned out that I ended up, I just said, I'm going to keep looking just in case. And the Georgia job opened up. Actually, Bobby Bayless recommended that for me. I was doing a mentorship program through the ITA, and he was my mentor. And again, my lack of knowledge on tennis history, I didn't even realize the significance of Georgia tennis until I talked to Bobby Bayless, and then, of course, applied for it. And I know that you put in a good word for me, and Manny and Jamie were, awesome and incredible people.
I think to back up on, we'll talk about the Georgia staff with Cornell. I always tease and say the most important person at Cornell is the goalie on the hockey team. I grew up, I hated Cornell because they were so good in hockey. And I was born in Potsdam, New York, where there's, Clarkson College, and we were all Clarkson fans. That's something we talk about. Ned Harkness, he won 2 titles. He won titles at RPI in 2 sports. He won titles at Cornell in 2 sports, lacrosse and hockey. But Garrick Blaylock, Gabe Wapner was just here, a Cornell alum, and we trained. And Eric Blaylock is in charge of the club team, and he's the advisor. But for our listeners, it just takes one. With Sylvia, Steve Denton told him to, that. So Sylvia will call me up and sight unseen, he's going to be interested in someone who's like yourself, who spent time with us. But Steve Denton, who was great player, 2 in the world in doubles and 11 in singles. I really remember him being shocked that he was impressed that we coached all these high school champions. Usually, touring pro is a little bit removed from that. But so, the connection. Raleigh, we're hitting them over the head for like all of us making mistakes in our 20s. But then with Georgia, I don't have any connection with Jamie, but Manny Diaz, I have to say is that, this guy could, Welby would hit him over the head, but he'd stay around and keep getting hit over the head. I don't know whatever I would have said to him, but Manny hired you, but then you couldn't teach, right? You're a volunteer.
Yeah.
You couldn't teach private lessons because nobody could come on campus.
I couldn't use the facility. Yeah. So I was essentially COVID. They didn't allow people on the facility outside of the team and the staff. So I did teach. It was at the public park, the IM courts, which actually an incredible facility, like 16 courts, not well taken care of necessarily, but almost always packed in Atlanta or in Athens, Atlanta, Georgia as a whole. Tennis is big.
Huge.
So,
the Alta League.
Yeah, we'd go out there and I'd have, a few lessons a week out there. And yeah, it was like we'd have to wait for a 16 court public facility, at 8 p.m. and which, obviously frustrating waiting for the court, but just so inspiring being out there and what a tennis city Athens is.
I love going there for the NCAAs.
Yeah. So that was, it was cool. The tennis community, the pros and cons of being at Georgia in that time, COVID and being in a new place. And Athens, I always get the question, oh my gosh, you must have loved Athens. Like I didn't really live in Athens because it was during COVID, during the pandemic. But, tennis matches and things like that. I mean, yeah, probably over 1,000 people out to matches going crazy. And the environment there was world class from what I've seen. And, Georgia, so many things there, so many routes to go into.
I think giving you the advice that I remember having Nick White, who now is at Tufts. He spent time at Duke as a volunteer, like you were a volunteer at Georgia. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, spending so much time with Matt Clark. So why don't you call Matt up? And I'd say, Matt, this guy, Nick's going to call you up. And now, certainly they know each other. And I said, he's just going to reinforce what I say. You don't have a speaking part when you're a volunteer. You go in and, somebody might be a rising senior. So they're starting their 4th year, or junior, they're starting their 3rd year. Again, I would say so many volunteers, and I don't think this is right. They're former players from the same team and they're hanging around because they haven't finished their degree. They're not bringing someone in and says, okay, this person as a volunteer can help with this and help with that. But again, with college tennis, I would go about it totally different. I don't think there's a place in the country that does it where it's like, no, you're going to come in and we're really not going to play you in the fall. And if, you're going to play this way and we don't care whether you win or lose.
No.
And, but the results would be there.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the non-speaking part. That was something
tough for you.
Tough for me, for sure. And, one of the reasons why both Cornell and Georgia were appealing was, and now Dartmouth, is that I talked to the coaches involved, the head coaches, Sylvia involved and Manny, who's trained by Welby. And, I felt like I would have the ability to coach. I think, like you said, a lot of volunteers are former players, great players, and they're sparring partners. They beat up on the players and they can provide some great experience and wisdom from their time playing and, in big matches and whatnot. But I felt like really the most important thing for me when I was picking a spot to go to, and still is, am I going to be able to have a speaking part, to work with players, to be involved in the decision making. And I think it was great that Manny had the Welby Van Horn background, has the Welby Van Horn background, and obviously the success that he's had, and what players have done for him on the team. It's it speaks for itself, and he's awesome guy, willing to let me work with some of the players and be involved as heavily as I wanted to be, and so that was a big plus and a huge reason why I wanted to go there.
So but then as a volunteer, could have stayed there. I know you had that option. I talked to Manny about that, but you're not paid. So now you're at Dartmouth. Tell us a little bit about Dartmouth.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up on Georgia too, I can't go through Georgia without talking a little bit about Jamie and Manny. But really too, like, I want to point out, I feel like this isn't talked about enough, but it was, the mental health stuff going, mid-pandemic to a new place, losing the team. I actually had a very serious girlfriend in Southern Utah, and, really the team became my family. And, Jamie especially was, I spent so much time with him, and he's a worker and so much energy. He's got 4 kids. When I showed up the second week, his wife had their 3rd and 4th kids as twins, and he didn't miss a beat. And so
Texas boy. I found out he's from San Antonio because when they practiced at our place in Orlando, we had Holt Vaughn there, who I guess they went to the same high school.
Yeah,
but he's a legend. Jamie's a legend in San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, he came into Georgia after winning U.S. Open doubles, and him and his doubles partner came in and played on the team with John Isner. They won 2 national championships, and he actually, he's one of the people that I think he's a phenomenal player, and then went, right from a playing career at Georgia. The following year after he graduated, he started as the assistant at Vanderbilt and did a great job. Their program was moved up very quickly. I think they got to, and I think they had match points on Wake Forest when they were number 1 in the country. I want to say they got to like top 10, top 2. I don't remember exactly.
Late Ken Flack was the coach. They were in the finals, lost 4-3 to Illinois. Maybe it was then. I'd have to do my homework on that. But I remember being at Georgia when he was on the team, and they won. But I don't really remember him as a player. Certainly you remember someone's name and who was playing, but it's not really much about his game.
Yeah,
you got to watch somebody several times unless you're there to watch them.
Yeah. No, and he can still play. I mean, he would get out there. A lot of the individuals, he would be sparring partner, and he wouldn't miss a ball.
No, when I talked to Jeremy Wertzman, you call people by last name. You need to watch our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied. Wertzman is 11 years old. There's so many people we need to get on these podcasts. And, he became one in the NCAAs. But I still said, Wertzman, can you still beat everybody on the team? And he's very, humble guy. And I think I can do that. He just hits the ball so much better.
Yeah.
But he can hit from every part of the court. He actually played, remember when he played doubles with Brian Wilson after college tennis, and they spent time with me in Florida, and Wertzman could volley really well. But he when he was a rising senior, I remember his father was getting off on tangent with Steve and his brother Mark. They come down, and I make a tape for the young Ty Tucker, and I said, this is what you need to do with Wertzman. He's not playing the yellow zone. He's not like say Hewitt said that. He goes, no, that's the biggest part of my game is I don't have a midcourt game. It's like, well, Hewitt won doubles at 19. I mean, people forget things like that. Won the U.S. Open. But so the coaches, that's always, I think, a bonus. Like Welby says, if you can really flat out play, they say, okay, I'll beat you, I'll beat you 20 different ways. I mean, at least I'll beat you 3 or 4 different ways.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think too, the coaches, it's the community, the tennis community of coaches is, I see almost all the people that are still in tennis in their later years and stick with it of, just a great group of mentors and coaches, and, whether it's from a technical standpoint or just, the energy and passion and love for the game. And, what a community we have as a group of tennis coaches.
But the listeners should know that when do college tennis players play their best tennis? The year they're done with college, if they're not playing pro tennis. They're not trying to play pro. They've played college tennis at a high level. They've gone to work, and they're still playing a little bit of tennis. They play really well because they're relaxed.
Right.
That's something is, Jim Lair, you got to be able to combine being intense and being relaxed at the same time. And can you have fun when you compete? You thrive on the pressure. Jim Lair, again, the stress of the pressure, that's the good guy. The recovery is the bad guy. I mean, I see kids every day. They just self-destruct after a point,
right?
Beat themselves up. It's, so did you apply to several schools? Tell us a little bit about Dartmouth.
Yeah.
There's a connection also to, I think, with Xander being pointed towards us.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us who Xander is.
Yeah, so Xander Centenari is the head coach at Dartmouth, graduated from Dartmouth, played on the team there. Actually, really cool story. We'll have to get into that.
What we do it now? He was like a 3-star and took a year off after high school and
he
played in the lineup.
He did the gap year. He was, I think his highest, he was like 100 tennis recruiting, which is, not great.
100 in his class.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Not 100 in the country.
Right. 100 in his class for tennis.
Which makes it lower.
Right. Depending on
how you look at it.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but came in and, took the year off and then, went to Dartmouth and really improved a ton. Playing lineup, I think not all American, but I think all Ivy, played one and ended up playing and having a 4-year, professional career traveling around and, not really, really, really making the big time, but, 500 in doubles and, he's gonna give me some crap here if I can't remember. I think 1,200 singles, 700 singles. But just what a growth, from where he was, and good player, and I think that's really cool. Obviously, we talk about that a lot with recruits. Is Dartmouth is a place where players can get a lot better, and here's case in point right here with Xander. But yeah, so trying to decide what I wanted to do next, we lost. Tough one in the quarterfinals of NCAAs, and just trying to sort out where I wanted to go, and back and forth a lot. So many positives to Georgia. Dartmouth came on the radar. There was a couple head coaching jobs that I applied for. And actually, I wasn't that high on Dartmouth initially. My first thought, I didn't really know much about it. And Xander was in the ITA mentorship program that I talked about earlier, where my mentor was Bobby Bayless and his mentor was Dave Fish. And so I had, interacted with him a bit. And so we had that connection. And, I think you made the connection, and Xander had come down and spent some time. And, I think it just says a lot about a coach and the lack of ego and the desire for growth if they're, going to new places and trying to learn. And, that's the kind of coach I want to work for. And so he came down, spent some time with you.
He's not much older than you. You guys are young.
Yeah, he's a bit older, early 30s, but yeah,
okay,
he's,
I thought he was, when I met him maybe 2 years ago, I thought he was 29. But anyway, so yeah, it doesn't really matter, but anyway, young.
Yeah, young
in his career too. I mean, he spent a little time at USF.
Yep.
And then
couple years at USF. He's in his 3rd year at Dartmouth.
It goes by fast.
And I think 4 or 5 years on the pro tour. But yeah, so I think, not just the fact that, having the involvement with GreatBase and having learned from you, but the piece of a coach who's ambitious and is looking for learning opportunities to better themselves. That's one of the most important things that I look for in a mentor and an employer, a boss. And, so we started talking. He's in the mentorship program. He spent time with you. He went down and spent a week watching Florida Gators practice during the pandemic, and just could sense that he was also ambitious and passionate and wanted to learn and really be a phenomenal coach. So started really seriously considering that, and Georgia was putting together a pretty strong team that was I think they're gonna compete for an SEC title and potentially national championship this year. So that's obviously tempting. And actually Jamie was, influential in my decision. I went in to talk to him about it, and I was basically said, I don't think I'm gonna go into this. And, And he was like, you need to consider this. You need to pursue this fully and get through and learn everything you can about it. And the more I learned about Dartmouth and Xander and the team, I mean, won the Ivies in 2018, top 25 in the country, 2020. And, it's doable. And the Ivies to me I didn't realize how good the tennis was there. 2020, there were 5 teams out of the 8 Ivies that were in the top 25 on the men's side. So,
wow.
Yeah, really, really good tennis, and I had no clue. And so thankfully Jamie said that, I just was kind of not really giving it a full consideration. And we finished the NCAAs and took a visit up to Dartmouth. I, wanted to see it. Not a huge fan of the cold in general. I'd much prefer being down south, but so I wanted to check it out and the community and the area. And, I'm an outdoorsy guy, and our slogan is welcome to the woods. So it's up there, and, you're not in a city. And that's really important to me, is being someplace where I can, be happy and enjoy my time. And I'm not a big city guy. Just had an amazing visit and really like Xander. And
you could say one thing and 2 things. It's like when you said that Xander went to Florida to watch the University of Florida practice, I think is Scotty Perelman, who is obviously a big part of the program, and think so highly of Brian Shelton. What an amazing story. Yep. We had Scotty on right after they won the NCAAs, and what he did say is that Brian, what a fantastic tennis mind, but he goes, but I'm not the head coach. I know my role, but if I was the head coach, I would do it the Vic Braden way. Xander should know that. That's where the people need to listen to these podcasts. I remember giving Xander a reading list. So where I comes, all right, you're Ivy League graduate. Let me give you the test now. We gave you the reading list. Let me give you the test. Tell us about Dartmouth to get in. Listeners are good, different angles. I mean, how do you get into Dartmouth?
Yeah, you
study.
Yeah, study, practice. It's very hard to get in. Nearly impossible to get in without the support of an athletic team. I say nearly impossible. Obviously, a number of people do it, but really the students that we're looking at are, they're passionate about academics, and for us, for possible recruits, families out there, just kind of give a sense. It's a combination of GPA, SAT, and Dartmouth their admissions department is really looking at who's going to be successful. I think there's some schools that are, they want the most prestigious and they want to turn down as many people as possible. And I see from the Dartmouth admissions that it's really, they want to make sure that someone is going to be able to succeed and has the academic skills. And so
every kid has to be interviewed, correct? They're all interviewed by an alumni.
I'm not sure on that, actually.
My sister, she did that for Cornell. I've had many students go to Ivy League schools, and I'd be surprised if they didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
I tease people and tell people, I have a Dartmouth education because I went to a prep school. I mean, I think it's 5-10 miles away. It's right there. Yeah. And Meriden, New Hampshire. But many of our professors were, they were grad students at Dartmouth. Yeah. And, but no, it's a beautiful part of the country, especially in the fall. Yeah. When the leaves change.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
Fall is like September.
Yeah.
Winter is definitely October.
Yeah, not this year. When I left, we didn't have much snow. We didn't have any snow. But back to the academics, I think that's an important piece for parents and kids to know is like, SAT, we're telling kids like base level 1350, you want to be higher. If you're around 1350, a little lower, and GPA is good, then you can make it work. But Dartmouth is looking at rigor, so you could have a 4.0, but if you're not taking honors and AP classes, they don't look upon that fondly, and they want to see good trend. They don't like kids got great grades in their freshman and sophomore year and not great grades in junior and senior. That's not a good sign. So they've really looked into finding.
Say that again. About grades.
If your grades start off really well in high school and then go the wrong way, if your academics are getting worse, it's not a good sign for them. The kids maybe a little getting burned out or losing interest, whereas the kid who gets a B his freshman year is doing all right if he works up. And you definitely want to avoid C's. That's a red flag. But taking AP classes is important. The rigor level is important, and I think one of my favorite stats is Dartmouth's athletic graduation rate. I think its 5-year graduation rate is the highest in the country. It's 99%. So the students that they bring in, I think so many people think it's, okay, you want to be prestigious, and that's why they're turning kids away. And it's really that they want their athletes to be successful. And so I think it's important for students to realize that and, work their hardest. And
that's really interesting about grades. I know a lot of high school seniors, they didn't do well, and all the paperwork was done to apply. I think of an example of, let's say, Middlebury. I could name many where if you were accepted but you didn't do well your last semester, they wouldn't let you come until January. So there was a while there where for other Division III schools too, they'd come and spend a semester with me. They got to improve their tennis game, but they were sent because they said, yeah, you can come, but you can't come until January. So they let them know where the bear crossed the river.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I tell kids that I've trained that go to an Ivy League school, you want to be elite, but you don't want to be an elitist.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've been achievers their whole life,
Yep.
but most of them, or a good percentage, I know you've only been there a short period of time, but are born into privilege.
Yeah.
What are your comments on that? Do you find the elitist attitude?
Yeah, I haven't seen, like you said, I haven't been there that long. I haven't seen it too much. I think there certainly is a lot of privilege with the athletes, both that we've worked with, the athletes we're recruiting, and at the same time, there are some. I think the Ivies, probably my favorite part about the Ivies actually is that all the financial aid is need-based. There's no scholarships, there's no athletic or academic, and so the less money a person's family has, the more money Dartmouth is able to give them, and so. It's great for, kids that are underprivileged, that grow up without the means. Actually, if you're under, I think it's 125,000 or 150,000 household income, you go to Dartmouth basically free, tuition, room and board. And that, I think, to me is a really cool opportunity to, if we can find kids like that, one, it's, financially suitable for them, but also, I think giving kids that grow up, maybe have a little more adversity growing up, giving them the opportunity, and that's where you can really change lives. A family maybe throughout the years, doesn't have generational wealth, and then one of their children goes to Dartmouth, and that changes. So I think that's neat.
I'll just share this with you. Ferris State hockey, Dartmouth hockey. I'd like to visit Dartmouth to see if I could pull this off, but I can remember being in the Ferris State, the Rock cafeteria.
Yeah.
Amazing place.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, okay, we're going to be here for a while. And we're going to have lunch here and have a meeting here. I said, maybe I'm embellishing this, but I believe it was 10 for 10. I said, I'll be 10 for 10 telling you who the hockey players are.
Yeah.
And of course, some of them are wearing a sweatshirt that says Roots. And you just know, okay, that's Canadian.
From Canada, yeah.
But I'd like to go to Dartmouth and say, how can you do that? I go, these are my people. There's always a pretty boy on a hockey team. For the most part, they're going to come in and they don't really care what they're wearing or how they look. But I would say this, having not had anything to do with your tennis team, although I think back about people I've worked with that went to Dartmouth, that get them to hang around with the hockey boys.
Yeah.
With back in the 80s in training tennis teachers, we used to have the students watch these sports movies on the weekend. One was a wrestling movie. And I remember Tylee at Illinois pulled this off. And you saw it in the movie. We made students watch it every year. I mean, he's there 7 years. So the Illinois tennis team, they have to go into the wrestling practice, rubber bats. They all have to get around the circle. They're on their knees. They have to be back straight, arms behind their back, look straight ahead. And, this is a scene from the movie. And Tylee told the wrestling coach, if one of my guys flinch, one of my guys smirk, pull him right out here. Just have someone flip him around and throw him on the mat. So then to say, okay, let's put the guys in the rubber suits and they got to climb up and down ropes. And that's definitely, you should do something on the Dartmouth campus where, the tennis kids, sure, they may interact in the weight room or know each other socially, but, just make them go sit and watch football practice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things. I mean, you guys are young in your careers, but it's like I said last week or 2 weeks ago, these podcasts, a gentleman here is from Minneapolis is that, well, if they're producing tennis players in Moscow, why can't they produce tennis players in Minneapolis? And, why can't Dartmouth beat Stanford? There's so much recruiting, but Tony Gotzik went to Dartmouth,
Yep.
who's obviously everybody knows is Federer's agent. His son's a very good tennis player. I was telling Xander, I said, you need to recruit this guy.
Yeah.
I said, just get him on film.
Yeah.
But Xander, he hasn't spent as much time with us as you have, and you in our world, you haven't spent much time. I think it's very good. Like you're circulating, you're coming back. You got to spend time around it. There's so many different levels. So with that, so I get this reprimand out. Raleigh listeners, he's missed out. So now we're into 72, 73 podcasts, and he hasn't listened to all of them. And what he should have done is, put the headset on or drive the car around and go, he's got all week. And I know we don't need to have podcasts that are 3 hours, but he's got to listen to it. Because I think of, you're mentioning Greg Patton, Doug Verdick. You needed to listen to the Jim Verdick podcast. So it's the same with Xander. You can search and say, okay, what programs are out there? You asked that question the other day. Xander's asked that question. You want to go forward and learn from everybody. Dave Anderson, Go Back to the Future. So you've got one of our pillars, Jim Verdick, his podcast, and then his son. And then you were in a meeting yesterday, so I'm reprimanding Raleigh. There's a book back in the 80s, The 1 Minute Manager. I don't really reprimand for 1 minute, but it's supposed to be 1 minute reprimand and 1 minute reward. Author's name was Blanchard, I believe. So
You reprimand for 1 minute, but it's like 201 minutes back to back.
Yeah. So I was reprimanding some young kids today. Sit, we do have Chuck Creasy on the docket where, he took his players to West Point all the time. And, I had to kids, all right, sit military, what they do at the military schools. Sit in the first third of your chair. Put your feet flat on the floor. And, you're showing somebody else a video and it's raining out and it's okay, we're going to teach character. And, you got 9-year-olds in the room. And it's like, no, this is going to work.
Yeah.
And the mom and dads, no, if your 9-year-old's bored, you can all leave. In this Flanagan Tennis Center, I should say, with his partner, FM Allington, this beautiful setup. No. You're sitting down. This is what we're doing right now. And that's how they learn to be able to teach tennis. For us, it's all about learning to be a self-coach. But anyway, Doug Verdick's letter, then we put it on Facebook. So our understudy here, Raleigh Grossbaum. Now, Gross is big and Bum is Bum, so he's a big bum for having he could have read the letter that was on Facebook. And everybody on your team needs to read that letter. And if basically, if you and Xander could pull off what Jim Verdick pulled off, you're, you want to have somebody come in they're number 12 on your team, and they're, I know you can't redshirt people. You can have people take a red shirt away from Dartmouth.
Yeah.
Like say you can talk about Waleed Adair, who's going there. I've talked to his mother. I don't think he should go there in the fall. He should take another year.
Yeah.
If he was in the NFL, if would he be a starter right away? If he was a college football player, does he know the Tom Brady story? Is that okay, you're the 5th string quarterback. You're just the thing is that, and I think that's certainly you needed that when you came to us. You needed sit down and shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was tough for you. I mean, you came to us and we had teenagers, they certainly played at a higher level. And it was very marginal.
Yeah.
But they knew more about tennis.
Right.
Technical, tactical, statistical. And, the way we train, it's information-based. That doesn't mean we're going to have a 16-year-old go run the team, and we want to keep their ego in check. There's always learning. But when it just comes down to fact-based information. So with Dartmouth, to say, okay, how are you going to beat, there's strong teams. Like, how are you going to beat Harvard? Harvard's going to get the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah. They're certainly tough to recruit against. The kids, the big H is,
the H-bomb.
Yeah, it's that's obviously, the pedigree there.
I mean, Batman did go to Princeton, but for the most part, movies, you don't really hear Dartmouth. You should. And actually, Dartmouth's ahead of Harvard on many polls.
Yeah. Yeah. I found one recently that I love. It's my favorite. I've been talking about this one a lot. Is the Forbes put out a poll which universities produce the happiest, most successful alumni. And I was, kid you not, scrolling through 25, 24, 23, hoping to see Dartmouth. And I can't tell if I'm, it's like, am I getting frustrated because I don't see them or excited because they could be higher? And Dartmouth's number one. It's like just, that was a big moment where I was like, okay, this is, the people that come out at Dartmouth, they love Dartmouth. They're huge fans. And I think at the end of the day, you've got, the college rankings and, which school is the most prestigious and says no to the most number of kids with a perfect SAT and all these. And at the end of the day, kids, you just want to find a school where you're going to be happy and you're going to succeed. And, I think Dartmouth is a great place for that. And, I think the Ivies as a whole, really, I've been getting close with a lot of the Ivy coaches. And one of my favorite quotes so far this year, the new Brown assistant coach who actually volunteered for Sylview at Cornell, and has done a few different things. Rob Raines said to me, the Ivies, really, we're offering the kids the best value proposition. These other big schools, big time programs, obviously the pedigree of sports and whatnot, but in terms of lifelong career value, you can't beat the Ivies, even if the funds, even if the cost is higher. The kids are going to be, tennis is, for a certain amount of time, but then, and obviously the tennis level is high, but you have an Ivy League degree, you're set in a lot of ways. And so, I think that was really cool.
Well, I would say that the door's open. I mean, you still have to prove yourself, but you're a lifelong achiever. I mean, you've been achieving since kindergarten.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it works. I mean, the Irish kid, Garrett Doran, we mentioned that. I'm the dumbest person who ever went to Harvard. But with, different experiences with Ivy League kids. I can remember having two kids at a place where we could house players, and I got two kids that are Ivy League bound. They're seniors, and they're day off, and it's like 10:30, and they're still sleeping. And I just get on the phone, I pace back and forth, and I call my late mother up, and I'm going, I don't know about this Ivy League deal. I mean, these two guys just going on. These two guys are just bums. They're still sleeping, and da. But no. I think it's the work ethic. You go to a school like that. You look to your left. You look to your right. Yeah. I think that's where I've had a lot of kids take AP classes that weren't interested in taking the AP tests. They weren't interested in the AP credit. They just wanted to be where the competition was. They wanted to be with better students.
Yeah. No, I think it's spot on, and I think you're seeing that. The Ivies weren't historically that strong at tennis. I mean, obviously way back in the day when they were, one of the dominant schools. But, the last bunch of years, the Ivies have been getting stronger and stronger. And,
Well, I think one thing is that years ago, kids who went to Ivy League tennis, the kids who played Ivy League tennis, what did they do with their summers?
Internships,
and
still true.
That's one thing about a D3 kid. No, why don't you go become a captain of the team, become a team leader, and help your team win a national championship? At least have that mentality for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
It's just like going back to Ferris. Is that is the best internship with one where you make the most money, and what's going on in with companies in America is they're hiring athletes now because athletes have had a boss.
Right.
That means coming back to how do you grow? You have to eat fertilizer.
Right.
I'll tell you a couple points I've shared here with Riley. So senior moment. Roley, we're supposed to call you.
Yeah.
Flanagan wants me to call you by the last name. It's not Riley, it's Roley. But I got that in with.
Hope Flanagan's listening.
We could always just tell them. we don't want to tell anybody. Okay, fast forward to, this spot on the tape.
Flanagan did that with me on one of them. He mentioned me in one. And he said, "Hey, Didn't tell me where, but I, of course, listened to the whole thing.
No, he called you leech. That's the chip on the shoulder that we tennis coaches have been in the trenches have, is that you guys show up wearing your nice outfits and your Nike clothes, and you got an expense account, and you're flying into a tournament, and you're merchant of flesh, looking at the talent. You weren't there teaching these kids when they're 8, 9 years old. You didn't, in our world, you didn't do the dirty work.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, I think it really takes a special approach to reach young men, especially at that age. But here's something I shared with you, is that on your campus in Hanover, New Hampshire, the standards, and again, Tylee's names comes up quite a bit, and with Dave Anderson, just the stories, and okay, how were those guys treated, and how tough was it? And how did they get their skill set? First you have to think they need to be honored from a personal standpoint, but then their families. But their training had a lot to do with it. Yeah. The Marines have something to be proud of, and so I can remember going to Illinois, one difference between Jennifer Roberts at Illinois and Craig Tylee at Illinois is Jennifer Roberts she was there running the camp. Tylee got to the point where he was a figurehead at the camp. And then through some of the connections that we helped him with, and Tyler, next thing you know, he's a Davis Cup captain for South Africa. That's because we had, John Lofney Diaga, Jeff Coetzee. They trained as kids in Tyler, Texas. But with Hanover, New Hampshire, I can remember going to Champaign, Illinois, and they've got this beautiful Atkins Tennis Center. I was on the committee when it was built, and I had a lot to do with Illinois tennis, first through Roberts and then through Tylee, and it was, guys, there's not a junior in the building who can hit the ball.
Yeah.
And, then Tylee, he brought in Mark Voss, who went to Tennis Tech, and so I think really what you need to do, and you can do it within the rules. The one time I helped out NC State, we ran a year-round camp. I think a kid like Michael Ogden, who's 3-star, borderline 4-star, and he played in the lineup at NC State. I mean, man, he's a brute of a guy, big, strong, a lot of positives, great kid. But I think that every college tennis coach should be developing players within the community. And Hanover, what a great place to do it.
Right.
Small town. It's in the back ends of nowhere when it comes down to tennis. What do you call it? Back to the woods, or
Welcome to the woods.
Welcome to the woods. And that's something is that, you like to travel and you like to recruit. And you can do it year round. You could do it through however it's done, the continuing ed department. But if I were to rock up there and visit, go, okay, guys, let me see the juniors you got in this town that hit balls. You guys, you and Xander, okay, let me meet with the high school coaches.
Yeah.
And, you can check out the NCAA rules. It's okay, let's do this. And, again, Brian Boland did so many great things. I wouldn't be doing it to give out free chili and free T-shirts and you just get fans in the stands.
Right.
Is that let's educate the parents as well. And, you and Xander should be educators. You should be pillars of the community.
Right.
One thing that I think is really kind of gross, actually, is all the whining and dining to recruit a kid.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be great if you guys were there for 10 years and you could just say, like, say at Tony Gotzik, if Xander said to me, well, I don't think his kid would be interested in Dartmouth. I said, Craig Tylee would recruit him. You got to get him on film. I haven't seen him play in a while. And obviously he's a very good tennis player. But what do you have that other people don't have? And if you really, you need to spend more time with the GreatBase. You need to spend more time with the information. You need to get to a higher level of competency.
Right.
So it's like, no, then when it just comes in, it goes, no, this is what we do. And it's different.
Yeah.
It's totally different where it's like, no, we're helping the high school players. And really what should happen, and it doesn't happen in all of America, is, working with elementary school kids.
Yeah.
In tennis, we have to be clever. Like I told Russ Hamilton's here today, he played high level table tennis. And I said, put your daughters in pickleball tournaments. Get up there, square out in the ready position and volley. And that's, I walk by a pickleball every day. I talked to a woman today. I said, how's it work? Tell me, how's it work? You go and you put your rackets on a rack and you wait your turn. You get to rotate on the courts, and you play to a game to 11. I go, then what? The winner stays? She said, no. Everybody's off the court. The next 4 go. It's user friendly.
Yeah.
It is beating tennis by a mile.
Yeah.
As a purist, I'm going, oh boy, it's kind of, it's like wiffle ball. Can't you really even play with a softball? But the people coming up in the game today won't be good pickleball players. They can't volley.
They can't go forward.
They can't go forward. And it's like, there's no serving. But, I mean, really think outside the box. And with, I know you have all the academic challenges with your students. Also, you have the NCAA challenges. You don't only have so many hours. Yeah. But with, I mean, I could ask you 50 questions right now. You've only been there for a while. Let's go through systems for a second. Have you brain typed every player there? When it comes down to it, does every player there, systems, do they know the grips? You've only been there a short time. So, I mean, I would talk to you the same way I talk to a junior I see I'm an old person, so I see what a 25-year-old's doing, and I go, okay, it's no different than this 15-year-old. Okay, let me show you how you guys are pretty much doing the same thing. I sit down with your team right now and say, okay, let me see you put a grip sticker on. And then you hide the grip and you give them a grip test.
Right.
And then you say, okay, tell me all the ramifications. I would not have a number 7 and number 8 be a rah-rah cheering the team on. I think that's pathetic. You need team spirit, but why don't you do what the NFL does with, like who becomes a great head coach is the second string quarterback.
Right.
What do? They wear a headset, they carry a clipboard, and they never leave the head coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, that doesn't exist in tennis. No. It doesn't exist in tennis. I mean, going on a rant here with college coaches, I mean, it's pathetic where they're taking kids and they're going, well, if you come to our school in the fall, you can play pro tournaments. We got futures on the schedule. And it's like the kid doesn't even have a service motion. The kid doesn't even go to the net.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to come in. And then also, too, I remember at one point they have improved the rules. It was the University of Florida for a long time. This was back when Andy Jackson was the coach. And now they have rules where you can only take, the Ivies probably don't let you do it at all, where the players would be allowed to just do online classes and go play in the fall. They just go play pro tennis.
Right, yeah.
And, they'll show up, be part of the team. And, really another thing that I think is a strong word, pathetic, is how many college, you can be a pro. Well, what programs have developed pros?
Right.
And with, but now with what people do in nutrition, what they're doing with fitness, I think a young guy could go to our Dartmouth, learn skill.
Yeah.
Learn to have a skill set. And, I think a lot of college coaches, junior coaches as well, parents, they're crossing their fingers. Junior parents, they're writing a check and they hope this is going to be the week. I looked at the Orange Bowl and the Eddie Herr, and there's some kids who had luck of the draw. They had a pretty good tournament. And it's like the worst thing that can happen to you is you have one good tournament. Yeah. It's kind of like Welby Van Horn. If you get one lucky shot, maybe I should shut up. With rant. You've been there such a short period of time, but and another thing that's a positive is you're living in the neck of the woods where people will be playing multiple sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's still something that exists in the prep schools. Mm-hmm. You have a club team?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I would befriend that club team, and I would say, okay, that I love the fact that club players have no coach. They have to raise money, mm-hmm. and I would get them really involved. You have open tryouts?
No. Well, no, we don't have open tryouts. We do have an athlete on the team who got into Dartmouth on his own and joined. But,
good enough to be on the team.
Yeah, but it's not a set. Every year there's a tryout.
Years ago, open tryout. Say if you won you finish, first in an open tryout tournament, and you play the last guy on the team, beat him 2 out of 3 times. You're on the team. He's off the team. We're just keeping 12.
Yeah.
Tylee had a guy really wanted to play, and it's a great story. The guy had a win against Stanford.
Wow.
Last name was Schwartz. 99% sure it was Schwartz. It's an amazing story. Is that Tylee said, "Well, I don't want you to interrupt the custodian, but he gets to here at 4:30. I'm telling you, you're coming. You can get here at 4:40. Knock on the door. He knows you're going to come, or be there when he walks in, something like that." And he said he's going to put half the lights on for the court, and I'll make one videotape for you, and you're going to marry the ball machine. And it was, so it's the story. I'm sure, like all stories, the fish was this big, now it's this big, but it wasn't like a Disney picture in 90 minutes. But by the time he was a senior, and he just wouldn't go away,
Right.
And he did, but he was being told how to hit the ball.
Mm-hmm.
The 21-hour rule, with
20-hour rule now.
20-hour rule, the Tylee would give someone a 10-minute lesson. Like, let me film you. This is where your backhand's no good. Boom. And say, okay, now go. And then he walks away. You guys hitting the ball machine on his own time. So it wasn't breaking the rules.
Right. That's where you get them at the facility, and then they're hopefully going to keep playing.
Yeah, you've heard so much about this, and I know I wrote Ty Tucker a letter and said, hey, and he said that you were too young, and if I wanted to do it or Andy wanted to do it, he'd be all over. He was looking for a volunteer, and I really think the USTA, this is a compliment to Tucker, if you took what Tylee did, which not many people understand, and if you take what Tucker does, which more people understand, but they just work. And I think go back to Jeremy Wertzer, my son Connor was part of the Ohio State program. But if people are taught how to hit the ball really well,
right?
I mean, really well, and people understand the details of hitting the ball really well. You have one flaw, then you have a counter flaw. And then you can take time away from competition and say, well, I mean, are you guys going to beat Harvard this year? Are you going to beat Harvard next year? You don't want to lose. You want to be competitive. But we're doing some things that nobody else is doing.
Right.
And so anyway, that's my reprimand. So you needed to listen to the podcast with Jim Verdick and then with his son, Doug. And then, you said you really like to travel and recruit. You're not so interested in having a tennis camp. You don't have to have just your typical summer tennis camp. I think it's a big mistake for a college coach to have the Nike camp.
Right.
It's an experience. It's like, no, we have the Dartmouth camp. And then first, certainly New Hampshire's so small, but, all the kids in New England, they just know that's where you go. And that's gone away. It used to be that's how people were paid. Right. They didn't get paid very much. They certainly didn't have coaches didn't have the budget to go recruit. Right. And I know we can't swear on this podcast, but they're basically sucking up. They're kissing a lot of butt.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll go visit this guy again and visit this guy again. And it really should be just the opposite. We really could help you with your game.
Right.
With what else would you like to say about the Big Green? Wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, give a little pitch here. I think really I was thinking about what things that listeners would want to hear, and I think I think mentioning the athletic markers, kids, I hate to hear, there's freshmen or I should say there's juniors now that want to go to Ivy, are interested in Dartmouth and have the level, and they just weren't aware of the academics. So I think mentioning that was important, letting kids, parents know kind of what they need to accomplish going into it. And then, I think tennis level, I think a lot of kids, myself included, I thought I was pretty good, pretty decent in Idaho. And, I think we use tennis recruiting a lot for the United States kids. That's easy to follow for, you could be 8th grade, freshman, sophomore, junior, you can see where you stack up. And, I think realizing that the best programs, for us, I know all the Ivy schools are, we're looking at top 50 kids, tennis recruiting. We get so many emails from kids that are like 150, 200 and are, even top 100 and are, number 3 in their state or 4 in their state. And it just, I think kids being aware ahead of time that it's a steep mountain if you want to play Ivy tennis. Top 50 is almost required. And really, Waleed, I think last time I checked, he was 25 in the country, maybe 26. And
is that class or again?
Yeah, tennis recruiting. So for the class of 22, and that's the level. And there's another kid in that same boat who's committed. And I think something that hits home with me is kids that are great kids, ambitious workers, and they want it. They just don't. They're unaware of. They miss things. They're not the tennis level, or they're not the academic level. Because that was me. I didn't realize how good I had to be. And I wasn't aware of my gap. So I think for young players, obviously the focus is getting better, but you got to be aware of how good you have to get. You have to have a good picture of what the end product looks like by the time you're a junior in high school. Again, you don't want the 8-year-old worrying about the 2-inch trophy or even the 12-year-old. But they need to know where they need to get to if they're going to play college tennis, and to be aware of that and where they need to be academically. And, the toughest thing is telling a kid that you really like, we just don't think you're going to help the team. And, I think one thing too that I've been talking to a lot of people about that I think is important that junior tennis players miss, is that you don't want to go to the best team you can possibly go to. You want to go to the team where you're going to be able to play and they're the best team that you can go to, or, they have other aspects. But, I see so many kids, they're just trying to convince the college coach that they're good enough to be on the team. And, as you say, most junior tennis players, they've never sat on a bench, and so I think, and agents are always trying to push the kids to the highest level school that they could possibly get. And, really the question, that I think is one of the most important questions that football players ask when they're being recruited is, am I going to play? Am I going to get a chance at the lineup? And I don't get that question from tennis players. They're not thinking that way, that I could go there and never play a match. And so I think that's something that I've been trying to share a lot, that use this platform a little bit, is if you're a tennis playing kid, is find a school where you're going to play. I've seen a number of kids, at Georgia, there was a kid I worked with a ton, and amazing kid, world-class kid, and ended up transferring because he was playing 7. It's like he wanted to play. So,
it's, Ivy Leagues, the ins and outs. You can't transfer after your sophomore year, right?
Into or out of?
Into.
I'll talk about Dartmouth is pretty much you can't transfer in at all.
Really?
There's like less than 5 people a year, not just athletics, but excuse me. They Dartmouth has all Ivies. They have a certain amount of spots allocated, for the student population. And the way it works is if no one in the class leaves, then there's no transfers coming in. And so at Dartmouth, like I said, 99% graduation rate is no one ever leaves. So we don't even, I should be more on top of this, but we don't even look at the transfer portal. We're not even aware of who's considering leaving, because it's nearly impossible to get someone in that's already gone to another school.
With Ithaca, you didn't make it to Ithaca, right?
No, not yet.
Not yet. You're going to go when Dartmouth plays them. Not too many highlights in my athletic career, but I played on a hockey team that lost 16-0 to Ithaca. And then the next year, I played on a prep school team that I made. Was just about all postgraduates. What a runt I was. Still not very big, but we played Dartmouth's second team. And that was back when freshmen weren't playing varsity. But there was a guy named Snickenberger from Ithaca. And so he was on the team, and so I actually scored a goal. It was a big deal to me to be scoring a goal against this kid Snickenberger. Because he was like 6'5". He ended up being the Dartmouth quarterback.
Oh wow!
But I would say this though, Andy Fitzell, let me see your students hit the ball. Then there's really no argument. There is no perfection, but again, players going into college tennis, it's still a developmental level. If they say they want to play pro tennis, it's a developmental level. So it's not win right away. You don't want to have a kid come in my opinion, that you got to totally revamp their game.
Right.
But But you met a young player from Argentina today, and he's 6'3", and we were told that he's valedictorian in his class, and he has one more year in high school, and then he could take another year, not at Dartmouth because you can't redshirt.
Right.
But I think the way we've trained you is, okay, how many days is that?
Right.
And you sit down and say, okay, this is what you need to do. And you have to obviously do it. I know we don't have time to get into all the rules, but that guy he doesn't need to go play a tournament. He needs to read books. He needs to be in front of a mirror. He's a big strapping athlete, and he's only 17 years old. But he's a redo, and you can redo at 17.
Right.
But the problem is very few people have actually taken a player that has to go backwards to go forwards,
right,
and then getting someone to do that. But I know Xander was out in California. It's not really a gossip, but I told you that he's networking. He's meeting Joey Johnson, who was working with players and those players, and was the mental part. And he showed him some video of one of your players on the forehead side. And the difference is that Joey, I'm sure he didn't say anything to Xander, but he said to me, he goes, there's still a lot of missing parts. And then you said right away that you were aware of that. But like, say, Spencer, who was on our podcast, and he's scheduled to go to UCLA, I recommended, and certainly that was not anything to do with his decision, I'm sure, maybe a little bit, that he should go on this mission with the Mormon Church, and he's in Argentina. And there was recently some film that went back and forth. He was hitting the ball better when he was 12 on the forehand side. Oh. And he has very little time, but he has a portable backboard. And, you just think of course, it happens in football quite a bit with the Mormon kids, how much more they can mature.
Right.
Years ago, not only did freshmen they couldn't play on the varsity, which was better. It was a developmental team. But there was places like Sweden, Germany, South Africa, where once they graduated from high school, they had to do 2 years of something. You could say, well, it was more like the Peace Corps, or, it was the Army, but they had to do something for the government.
Right.
And we're talking about young men. So then they show up and they grow up. But that's, you're dealing with 4 years. Now, granted, on the front side, when you can recruit them. But no, I think that with the training with us, you just need to take it up a level. And no, I don't think it's a matter of searching for the Holy Grail. I do think that, you always want to be open and learning. But going back to, say, Braden, for example, that at one time was the national training book for many countries, China being one. There was a coach in China told all his coaches bringing their Braden book in, we'll have a bonfire, and they did. And that would be a leg up. That have your program be fact based, and it's not. I'll end with this, and then you make a closing comment. We're not very happy when someone says, "Are you a great baser?" I say, "Are you kidding me?" It's fundamentals.
Yeah.
It's just pure, rock, solid fundamentals. It's information-based, and it's simply getting kids to have more efficient swings, being able to play all the court, the philosophy of Braden, hit all the shots, hit every shot from every position of the court, any surface, singles, doubles. But it's great to have Jan hear your story. I think also one thing is you went through our program. You've collectively put in, let's say, a year. You keep showing up a little bit. It's the school of hard knocks. To be good, it's the school of hard knocks. But for yourself, you're connected and at a young age, but people should know that it's not a matter of your path has been, I think, very exciting because there's so many people. My son Connor was offered jobs as a paid assistant without even applying. Yeah, he's got a sense of humor. Ty Tucker will tell you, yeah, he's really good in the locker room, funny guy, hits the ball really well. But it's amazing with the volunteer coaches. With there's so many of them that they're helping from a recruiting standpoint because they have a playing background.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Zoli, Rolly, what Flanagan want me to call you? Raleigh Grossbaum. Wrap it up here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think all great stuff. I mean, it's it's a privilege to be on here. It's a privilege to be a part of this and to be learning and
Be a great baser.
to be a great baser. It's
Oh
a
God.
privilege to
Oh
be.
boy.
Yeah, and I think looking forward to seeing where the Dartmouth path takes me. And I think to answer your question, how do we beat some of these schools on a consistent basis? Is we gotta develop players. We gotta prove, document development, and I think that helps. I think that shows players. We can out train players, and then two is if we're demonstrating that, then hopefully the players that want to be trained well, it'll be easier to recruit them.
You want to outwork people. You want to outthink people. Granted, it's a tough thing because they have their academic challenge and the limited hours that you can work with them. I told you today, sometimes we're working with kids 5 hours a day.
Yep.
They're homeschooled. And you can't do that in college. But if I were to interview one of your players, whether people like that or not, when I've trained someone, I want to see your students hit the ball. I'll tell you right away, yeah, okay, I'm working with this kid and I still haven't got him to serve. Welby Van Horn, I never got a student hit the ball the way I wanted to. But then just say, okay, do they know the Jacobson language? Do they know it comes from Jacobson? Therefore they know some tennis history?
Right.
And really know it. Can they chart a match? Can they break it down? And then if you're doing that, because we're asked all the time, there's a lot of great people in college tennis, but coming back to Jim Verdict, that's where he's our pillar. How many people can take that unranked player and they're carrying the water bucket when they're a freshman, and Jim Lehrline, and they're carrying the national championship trophy when they're a senior?
Right.
And that's where it's very difficult, especially with boys. They come in and they think they're ready to go, and their junior tennis is behind them. And it's not like they're coming in and they've got 24 gold balls.
Right.
American kid. But Raleigh, another podcast in the book, 73. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your great enthusiasm, energy is respected, although we find ways to disrespect you. Keep smiling, Grossbaum. Adios. Thanks for listening, everybody.